Welcome to the Football Forecast, your ultimate guide to the NFL week ahead. Get ready as we dive deep into the biggest matchups, analyze key player performances, and break down the strategies that could make or break your favorite team's chances. Whether you're looking to dominate your fantasy league, make smart picks and bets, or simply stay ahead of the game, we've got you covered with insights and predictions. So buckle up, football fans. It's time to get your game face on for another action-packed week in the NFL. While only one team can hoist the trophy at the end, it all starts with the forecast. Welcome to the NFL Preview Part 2, the AFC. If you're joining us, you saw the NFC. And Nick, I won't make that confusion again because I've been saying the NFC and AFC a million times in confusion. So I'll try not to do that. I'm sure we should keep a counter on the show because I'm probably going to make that mistake like a million times as we're doing this show. But we'll do our best.
Well, since we're going to talk about some betting odds, like what do you think the odds are of the number of times you're going to say NFC by accident? What's the over-under?
Give it like a good 4.5 at least. That's what I'm feeling. I'm going to say it. There's a chance I could say it 5 times, but maybe I'll get lucky and I won't say it. Who knows?
Just avoid saying conference, and then you won't say it at all.
It's a good point.
Or just avoid words with the letter N in it.
Well, that's our names, so that would be another issue.
Well, I mean, outside of your names.
But whatever. But by the way, that's Ben Kruse, that's Nick DiMartino, that's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. We got a lot to get into. We're going to break down the AFC side of things. But before we do that, make sure you check out this show and every show across the Empty the Bench podcast network. Follow the network at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. And make sure you go follow all the shows of everybody who is sitting here, moving the goalpost, Forever Power 5, Hitting for the Cycle, Puncher's Chance, Empty the Bench. A lot of shows, all the social medias. Briefly scrolling across the bottom as well. Make sure you follow our YouTube channel, which is close to 870 subscribers, youtube.com/ETB Network for all our shows on the video version as well. Also, if you can't watch, you can listen. This will be up on the Football Forecast podcast feeds. So Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcast, it will be up there as well. Excuse me. And obviously, the network and the Football Forecast presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis, commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. So we've been having fun on Playback. We did WNBA the other night. We had some fun with that, even though some of the streams were not working 100%, but we fixed through that issue. We've done Olympic basketball on the men's side. We got to watch a gold medal game against France. And we got to see that victory. We are hopefully planning for the NFL on the Playback side, waiting for clearance on that. But we are planning to do NFL and college football on the Playback platform as well. Okay.
Wait, just one more question. Any chance we're going to do old games?
Yes, that is actually out there too.
You know what my pick was, right?
What was it again? I don't remember.
Malice at the Palace.
I'd be so down. I remember that game when it happened, by the way. I don't want to digress too much, but I definitely...
Yeah, we have to do Malice at the Palace.
I think they just did a Netflix documentary on that as well. But we'll save basketball for another time. All right, here we go. So our little graphic here, thanks to Tom Albano for creating both sides of these so that we can break down the divisions. We're going to start in the East, and we're going to work our way all the way west. So... here we go as we get underway with the AFC East. Obviously, the Patriots, the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bills. We're going to start with Ben's favorite team, the Patriots. Now, an interesting team to watch this year. Quarterback situation a little up in the air. Drake May, is he going to be the starter in week 1? I don't know. Ben, I'll start with you. Obviously, 4-13 record last year. Thoughts on this coming season?
Yeah, first of all, it's obviously kind of cool to be, I guess, the first team of the night, even though the team itself might not be in the first of the season, but we had our first for a while, so, I mean, I can't be too upset. But overall with this team, I feel like overall it's going to be a second year of rebuilding. I feel like last year was kind of check here in the first season under head coach Jerron Mayo. That head coach was from within. You take a look at the additions here. Jacoby Brissett, that's going to be most likely the starter. If not, it's going to be Drake May, of course, who was the third pick in the NFL draft. I think Brissett has a chance. I know that yesterday he got hurt in the third preseason game against the Commanders last night. But time will tell in terms of who starts for there. KJ Osborne is going to be probably a wide receiver 3. He obviously came from Minnesota. Don't really know a whole lot about him, but maybe he can give us, catches here and there, 20-plus yards. He does have a little bit of a speed attribute. This is a one I really like is Antonio Gibson. We really struggled last year with the third down back. He does bring that versatility, and to be a compliment to Ramondre Stevenson, I think could be a really cool fit with Gibson here. So I do really like that a lot. Austin Hooper, this is coming from the Alex Van Pelt tree. So they brought him from the Browns days over to the Patriots days. Hooper hopefully will be the backup to Hunter Henry. Chukwuma Okafor, I think I got that right. He's going to be one of the offensive linemen. Our offensive line is going to be a disaster. After what I saw last night, it's just not going to be great. I know David Andrews obviously is going to be a massive part. He didn't play yesterday, but he's going to be the center, of course, and hopefully he can kind of lead the guys around him because they definitely need it for sure. And then Sion Takitaki, he's probably going to be in different packages, playing linebacker. So I think that's not going to be a bad overall fit over there for the team. And then we got departures. Mac Jones, of course, he leads that. He moved on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mac, obviously, I know a ton of Patriot fans are really hard on Mac. I was one of the guys here and there, but I wasn't like trade this guy right away. I personally feel like they didn't give him enough pieces around to fully succeed with the overall team. But I also feel like at the end, he did not give him into favors either to kind of, keep on for the rest of the time long-term with the team. Ezekiel Elliott, he's getting up there. He's washed. Devontae Parker, I'm fine with moving on from Devontae Parker. Nothing bad about that. Mike Gesicki, he went to Cincinnati with Hooper coming in. Gesicki moves on, so it's kind of a one-for-one swap there. J.C. Jackson, he's actually going to be suspended for the first 4 games. He's actually still a free agent currently right now as we speak. Jalen Mills is also a free agent. He was actually currently with the Giants. And so he's not going to be around. Mac Wilson, he moved on to the Arizona Cardinals, I'm pretty sure. Trent Brown, he moved on to the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm thinking. And then Matthew Slater, who's in the Brady era type of tree, he was one of the last ones to move on from this past offseason. Slate's obviously going to be a guy that we're going to miss for a long period of time. And then, of course, the draft selections are the third to wrap it up. Of course, I talked a little bit about Drake May. He was the first pick in our draft class, 3rd overall. Of course, a ton of people are very high on him, including myself. But obviously, time will tell in terms of how we could put the pieces around him, the coaching, of course, and, of course, everything else from there. But I do think with the strong arm and the running attributes, he does have that. It comes down to the rest from there. Jalen Polk is one of the guys that's going to be probably a starter in this wide receiver class. I think at least he'll be at least number 2. I think he has a lot of great overall attributes over there. I really liked his game, of course, with Washington. He was one of the receivers with Michael Penix in college. Caden Wallace, this is a guy, the 3rd pick. He came from Penn State, offensive tackle. I actually do think out of all the tackles that we did get, Wallace could be a very fascinating one. He did not allow 1 sack in college during his time at Penn State. So that's one I do really like. Layden Robinson, on the other hand, didn't look too great yesterday. I know it's obviously preseason, but I don't know how much he's going to play this upcoming season. Javon Baker, he's actually played at 2 spots. Of course, UCF was one of them, and I'm pretty sure he went to Southern Alabama or maybe played a little bit at Bama. He was a transfer, I remember. He's kind of like Polk. He's a young kid, and he definitely has a lot of athleticism and other stuff as well. Marcellus Dial, corner. Don't really know a ton about him. Probably just going to be an overall depth piece. Joe Milton has a cannon for an arm, but he's not accurate. That's really Joe Milton's overall case. Him in college, he played at Michigan and Tennessee. And to recap here at all is Jaheim Bell. I think he actually has a case to be tight end 3. Really liked his game at Florida State. Played with Jordan Travis over there. And, he went to finish it off for the draft class there. So last year's record was 4-13, of course. It was not pretty. This year, I'm predicting probably around 5-6 wins. We have a really tough schedule. The team is super young. So obviously, it's obviously rebuilding time, but, I'm kind of coming in with expectations of hopefully some young guys come in, guys like Christian Gonzalez. I will say key departures as well, too. We did not put in there is Matthew Judon. Judon was a name that got traded. I should have even probably thought about that during key departures. I'm like, Judon was the biggest one out of all of them that we didn't even talk about. But Judon, of course, moves on. He was really kind of the big-time player since Brady left, I would say. So it is kind of tough that he moved on. But I do wish him well over in Atlanta. And then, that's pretty much it from there. So I'm really excited to see what Christian Gonzalez does. Of course, our young corner. Looked really good last year, but he did miss a ton of time last year because of injury, and a bunch of other young kids as well too. So that's pretty much it for the Patriots. I know obviously I had a decent amount there, but I'm expecting only like 5-6 wins, but it's more of a watch and react type of year than anything.
Yeah, I see that the same way. We'll go up. So Anthony, what do you think about the Patriots?
I agree with a lot of what Ben said. Ben, as a Patriots fan, my question for you is, look at that draft. I mean, how exciting are you that you see a bunch of offensive players for once? I mean, my God, people have been complaining in New England that Bill Belichick needs offense, but he keeps bringing in defensive players. So it's got to be nice to see some receivers on that list. I think the Patriots got a lot of stuff to build on. Definitely a year or two away. Probably around the same record. I do think you'll see some growing pains out of Drake May. Very, very talented kid. He's got a lot of Josh Allen in him. He's athletic. He can run. Got a cannon of an arm. He just got to get a lot of the mental aspect of the game down and get his accuracy down. But he's got all the talent in the world. He may not start the season, but he definitely, I think, will finish the season. The Patriots probably don't have a true number 1 receiver yet, but they do have a lot of young guys I like. I think DeMario Douglas showed potential last year. I think Baker, the rookie this year, could be pretty good. And Polk, I think, could definitely, establish himself. Maybe not ever be a true number 1, but they got some good young guys. On defense, Matthew Judon was definitely the face of that defense. What a huge loss. Probably one of the best pass rushers in football when healthy. But it definitely shows you that the Patriots know that they're not going to really be competing this year. You might as well try to stockpile on as many draft picks and assets as you can. But they do got some good defensive players. Gonzalez definitely showed a lot of potential. He's a tall, long corner. Who's athletic. I think he could end up being a true number 1 corner. I think Christian Barmore, the defensive tackle, is solid. New England's not going to have a great, pass rusher, but they definitely got some other defensive players to build around. So I think it will be an exciting year with some growing pains, and I definitely think they'll be better in the future, just not this year.
Yeah, really quickly, to kind of bounce off of Anthony's thing. Defensively, I think Jerron Mayo, of course, played defense with the team, so I think there's also a bonus there. Even though a guy like Judon and stuff leaves, I think it's more of can the offense actually move the ball? Because we saw like last year, there was just none of that. So we'll have to see about that. And the offensive line not being great so far doesn't really help my case, but we'll see.
All right, Nick D, you're up.
All right. So you said, Anthony, that there's going to be some growing pains. I would say this whole thing right now is a massive growing pain. Like, that's it. Like, this is the growing pain. These years. Like, it's not like it's going to, like, this whole thing is a massive growing pain. There's not really much silver lining to this season other than that it will eventually end. Like that's really the only silver lining to the season if you're a Patriot fan. Like this too shall end, as they say, if you're suffering. Like
I mean,
that's
the one
basically
silver
what
lining
this
though
is.
is Drake May's development. Though, if he does show growth and potential, like we saw with Josh Allen back in 2018, I mean, I think that's something that Patriot fans can hang their head on.
No, I totally agree. But like the point that I'm making is when you talk about like growth and development, that's like eventual. Like it will happen. Like if he shows
in the
potential,
future,
it's like, okay, he'll be better in the future, but we're not really doing anything this year.
Well, let me just put one warning out there. Obviously, Nick D and I are Jet fans.
Yeah.
But I think
like, I'm not saying this to be biased against the Patriots. It's just the honest to God truth.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when you look at this team, I mean, you look at the quarterback situation. Obviously, Brissett actually got hurt in the last preseason game, jamming a shoulder, I think, right?
Yeah.
So
it's because the offensive line, the penalties that you would see from this offensive line yesterday was comical. I think there was at least 6 to 8 of them. Some of them guys weren't even on the line of scrimmage properly. It was absolutely, mind-boggling.
Well, here's what you have to remember. First of all, I'm not sure. I wasn't watching. It might not have been their first string offensive line.
It wasn't.
I remember. So yeah, that kind of explains it.
But some of them
were good. But what I'll say is, I remember, not to make this about the Jets, but I remember. You remember this, Nick, I'm sure.
Yeah.
When Rex Ryan put the backup offensive line protecting Mark Sanchez, and then he got hurt in the preseason.
It was quite literally the dumbest thing I ever saw in my life.
It was a very Rex Ryan type of thing. That's probably what you were looking at. The other thing that I'll have to say is like having a good offensive line when it comes to in the NFL is kind of a luxury of the rich. Most teams don't have good offensive lines. All the bad teams we've ever seen have had bad offensive lines. I can't think of any team that was like below average that had an amazing offensive line. Every fan base has that same sort of complaint. In my view, probably because defensive lines have gotten bigger and faster at a higher rate than offensive lines were able to keep up. So, just expect to have a bad offensive line because that seems to be the norm for New England. But yeah, ultimately it's like this is similar to how I felt about a lot of Jet seasons when it's like, okay, we're going into it. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be fun, but we'll get through it together. And in football, it's a lot easier to deal with. I mean, like if you're also a Red Sox fan and a Celtics fan. Yeah. So you got that going for you. Be happy that it's a football team that you can kind of get through a football season. Like it's not easier than going through a baseball season. It's a good thing it's not the Red Sox that are this bad. You have to go through the whole summer watching them lose. So I guess it's a little better if it's your football team.
All right, let me just get in here because then we got to move along. Looking at this team, if Brissett is the quarterback, he's really a placeholder, as he's proven in every organization that he goes to. So I wasn't expecting a whole heck of a lot if he was the silver lining that was going to be the starter for this year. In my opinion, Drake May should get as many starts as he possibly can this upcoming season. And if he gets sacked 7 times, well be it. It's his rookie year. Let him have the experience. I hate this whole thing going back to like the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers days, where basically he was sitting on the bench behind Favre his whole career until Favre was basically done. You have no experience. Put him in, let him play. He's going to have some rookie woes while in there. Just let him play.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a lot of it's a mix between veterans and young players. And for the most part, that doesn't really work as well. When you have a lot of old guys here and a lot of rookie types or younger guys here, they clash because they're on different age range, different generations. They play the game differently. So I don't know. Nick, did I ask you for a record, by the way? I don't know if I asked you for how many wins you think.
I would say maybe 5. I would go with 5. But what I'll say is I agree with you completely. I don't buy into this notion that we have to wait for quarterbacks to get PhDs until they can finally get on the field. We keep hearing this guy's not ready. A lot of times not ready means he's just not good enough. And the truth is Aaron Rodgers didn't play not because they made the decision that he wasn't ready. It's because Brett Favre was the starting quarterback. But it wasn't like they said he can't play. It was all right, he's waiting behind Brett Favre, which is obviously a lot different. Especially this year, because it's it's not like you have anything to lose. You could go 0-17. Who really cares? You just get the number 1 draft pick. It's not really that big of a deal.
Right.
I mean, now Jacoby Brissett, I think that having a good backup quarterback
is important.
It's a very underrated thing. It is, especially now with quarterbacks frequently getting injured. There was an average of 2 quarterbacks per team last year.
That's crazy.
Which, I mean, I don't know if it's going to go the same this year, but it very well might. And also, I mean, another thing is like Gerard Mayo is a very inexperienced coach. I mean, he was never even a coordinator. He got the job because he's a former player. Ultimately, he was a linebackers coach. Not many former linebackers coaches end up not many people go from being a linebackers coach to a head coach.
I can't think of any, actually.
Not many. Brian Flores might have been.
Like, that's a whole nother issue.
He was never a defensive coordinator, but you also have to consider the fact that Gerard Mayo is an inexperienced head coach, and we don't know much about him, and he's a defensive-minded head coach, not an offensive-minded head coach. So we don't know how well he can really develop quarterbacks. It's a big question mark.
And I think, Nick, what a lot of, fans are probably thinking is they're thinking they're going to have a similar situation that the Houston Texans had with DeMeco Ryans. They think that they're going to have the same success, but I think DeMeco Ryans had a lot more experience coming from where he came from. So I don't think it's going to be a similar situation. And I also think C.J. Stroud is obviously much more pro-ready than Drake May. And I know you stated about, quarterbacks having to sit. I think every situation is different. I don't think you play the quarterback just to play the quarterback. I think it depends. Like a guy like Bo Nix makes sense. I mean, the guy's been in college football forever. But maybe a guy like we saw with Trey Lance when he's coming out. Now, I know he wasn't good and he was a bust, but a guy like him who didn't have many starts does need more development. So I think every case is a little different. But Drake May does have, a decent amount of college starts for a guy coming in. And, I think the best thing for him is to learn on the field and learn from his mistakes on the field instead of just sitting with a playbook.
Well, you know what, though? You learn from doing, just like with anything else. Like nothing can make a quarterback develop more than actually being on the field. Like,
that's a good point.
Sitting on the bench and watching can't be as effective as actually playing. Like,
right.
And also, Drake May was like the 3rd pick. It's like they didn't draft him at number 3
to sit.
For him to sit on the bench.
But if you look at like Jordan Love, I think Jordan Love benefited from sitting on the bench. Like a guy like him, I think benefited from having time to develop like Jordan Love. He wouldn't have been as good if he didn't sit.
The one thing I will say, and then we got to move on, I just looked up DeMeco Ryans. He's been on a coaching staff since 2017. So he was a quality control coach in 2017, and then he was.
What even is that?
What? I have no
Quality
idea.
Control?
Unless it has to do with like the playbook or something, maybe. I don't know. And then he was a defensive coordinator for the Niners from 2021 to 23.
Right.
So he's got experience. So that's a whole different scenario. All right. I think they're going to win like 4 to 5 games. Now, according to Vegas Insider, I think the number was 4.5 for the Patriots. I'm just looking that up really quick. Yeah. So it's 4.5. Do we think they're going to win 5 games?
Going with the Pats fan here, going 5.
I'm going 4.
I would go 5.
But I will say this, and I was listening to something before. Sorry, I don't want to keep delaying this, but sometimes with the bad teams, you might have an upset that you don't expect throughout the season.
Agreed.
So,
You probably will.
That's one silver lining if I take this whole entire thing out of it. And I was listening to actually a Patriots Insider on my trainer and then to work today, and he was saying that there might be a team that were like maybe the Texans, like for example, a team like the Texans, which obviously is growing. They're probably gonna be a contender once again. I'm not saying the Patriots are going to beat them, but a team like that, like a younger team that has a ton of promise, they're going to Foxborough, anything could happen. So, that's kind of the really quick.
That's kind of the Nick D approach. You never know what could happen. Anything could happen in the NFL. So, all right, let's move on. Our team, the New York Jets. Nick, I'll let you start, and then I'll tag along behind you. Obviously, 7-10 last year. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers hurt after 4 plays, ruined the whole season. Are you expecting anything different?
Well, I expect Aaron Rodgers to last more than 4 plays.
I hope so.
I expect him to last at least 5 plays.
Okay. Oh, come on. You're being a little too optimistic.
I'm going to do a bet on that.
Well, I think the biggest difference is here's the thing. I'm almost certain Aaron Rodgers will get hurt at some point.
Agreed.
Not like a season-ending injury. I mean, he's 40 years old. They play on turf. Apparently, turf can is more dangerous. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard.
Supposedly, because it's supposed to like rip up your feet more. Like,
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me if that were true. Except now we have Tyrod Taylor as a backup quarterback and not Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's better.
it's much
No, it's
better.
a lot
I mean, we learned that the hard way last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true.
I mean, the over-under for this team this year is 9.5. I would probably take the over. But even at 10-7, I would probably say the Jets go 10-7. The issue is, even if we do go 10-7, we still might not win the division because the division is so tough.
That's a scary thought.
I mean, the Jets and the Bills have slightly better odds. The Jets and Dolphins are tied according to this. So at 9.5. I'm much more, like I said, I'm much more confident about the Jets this season than I am that'll be better this season than it was last season. But you know what? I think that there's going to, but what I do know is that it's going to be a huge roller coaster ride and a huge media circus. We're playing the Niners week 1. I don't expect to beat the Niners week 1. If we don't beat the Niners, we're going on the road against the Niners, I would, under my estimation, going
Monday Night Football. Yeah.
Right, supposed to be like the second best team in the NFL. So I don't expect to go on the road and beat them on Aaron Rodgers' first game back. If we don't, that's okay. Like, it's not a big deal to me. But every single little thing is going to be a huge media circus against the Jets and against Aaron Rodgers, which we all know is going to happen.
Yeah, they have so many like nationally televised games, like exclusive televised games. It's
right,
crazy.
Well, we're tied with the Niners and the Cowboys. I think. I mean, like the Jets are one of the most going to be one of the most nationally relevant teams.
Well,
year.
in an unfortunate sense, sometimes.
Well, fortunate and unfortunate. It's partly unfortunate, but also because at least part of it is because we're supposed to be good. The Jets have been nationally relevant in the past because they were bad or because of drama. So this year there's some drama too, but at least it's also because we're supposed to be good and are one of the favorites to win the division.
No, I get that. And obviously we had the drama in training camp with Hassan Reddick, who was traded to here knowing he didn't have a contract. Now he's poo-pooing it and now requesting a trade. And obviously our GM...
By the way, it's not a huge deal. I mean, the Jets still have a very good defense with or without Hassan Reddick. Like, we want him, but we don't need him. It's not a huge deal.
And then Joe Douglas had to come out and make that statement saying, basically, until you show up to training camp, we're not doing anything with you.
Yeah. So...
And good for him. I actually agree with that. Until you get your ass to training camp, we're not doing anything with you at all. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I have the Jets finishing under 500.
That's a hot take.
I do.
That's a hot take. I think
I think Aaron Rodgers gets hurt.
Oh, first of all, I don't know. You're saying he's going to get... Well, first of all, it kind of depends on how many games he's hurt.
I think there's going to be a significant injury at some point.
And the truth is, throughout his career, Aaron Rodgers has had a lot of injuries, and now he's even older. So
I think if he gets hit, like, because you're going to have guys that want to make an impression on teams looking to get big contracts.
That's true of everybody, though.
No, but I think, hey, I hit Aaron Rodgers and took him out. Like, people are going to want that. And I think he's going to get hurt. I think he's going to have a significant injury. I think they're going to go 8-9 this year. And I think there's going to be a lot of problems in New York if they go 8-9. So
yeah, I mean, Robert Saleh is going to be in a lot of trouble if the Jets go 8-9 and miss the playoffs.
He's going to get fired.
He'll get fired, almost certainly. And he doesn't have any excuses this year because his quarterback wouldn't be Zach Wilson.
Right. Like, I mean, they got to come through. They got to play better offensively. Defensively was not 100% their issue last year. They were actually a really good defensive team. They just could not match offensively.
The defense can't do everything.
No, I'm agreeing. But I'm saying defense kept them in more games than they should have been in. So,
one thing I'll also say is, like, I think people aren't talking about the Jets drafting Jordan Travis in the 5th round. Yeah. That could be a pretty big deal. He was a star in college at Florida State and then people forget he got injured, and that basically ruined Florida State's season. So, I mean, I don't know how good he'll be in the NFL necessarily. You can be great in college and not be great in the NFL, but he did seem like he it did seem like, based on the type of quarterback that he is, that it could translate very well to the NFL. So that could be something that's good for the future. Aaron Rodgers is good for now.
I mean, I'll give you the wild speculation. I heard that the Jets might want to be in on Dak if he hits free agency, but I just don't see that happening. I'm just throwing that out there. But
I think that would be a mistake too. Just my personal.
Well, I wouldn't pay him $60 million a year. That's just me. But let's take the first 4 games of the schedule just for the sake of it. So obviously, San Francisco, Monday Night Football. I think they're going to get trounced in San Francisco.
You think?
Yeah.
I don't think they'll get trounced. I think they'll lose. I don't think it'll be embarrassing.
If the Niners don't have Trent Williams too, you got to keep that in mind. There's potentially there's a holdout out there for Trent Williams.
Well, Ayuk also.
Yeah, but I think
if they don't have Ayuk, I think they have a chance. I just don't see them winning.
I don't think Ayuk makes that much of a difference.
I think Williams more of a
I don't see them winning on the road against San Francisco. San Francisco's supposed to win this game, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to go 17-0. It's not a huge deal to me.
But then you have what do you have? Then we have the Titans, the Patriots, and the Broncos. I mean, technically, in theory, they are better than all 3 of those teams, in my opinion.
Definitely
the Patriots and Broncos are the 2 worst teams at least in the conference.
And they should beat the Titans too. So could they, in theory, start the season 3-1? They could. But I'm looking
you never know what might happen.
Denver?
I'm looking. No. I think it's at home.
Okay, well, then you guys will be fine. Because, I mean, sometimes with Denver, the altitude, I know obviously it's kind of a cheesy thing to say, but it does make a massive impact on these players. So if you had to go to Denver, I know as a Patriot fan myself, going to Denver so many years, the altitude does make a difference for a lot of these guys. And sometimes, the teams are just not on their right over all day. So I was wondering, just because the Jets went over, yeah, they're obviously the much better team, but, if they go over there and just lay a stinker, I also wouldn't have been shocked either.
Well, here's the thing. Even if Aaron Rodgers, God forbid, gets injured against the Niners and he's out the next 3 games, I still see the Jets being able to start off 3-1.
I could see that too.
Like with Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback, yeah, I think they could do that.
He was better than Daniel Jones last year, Nick. Let's just keep that in mind. He came in.
That's not saying much.
Wilson was better than Daniel Jones.
That's not saying much.
Well, I get it, but like Daniel Jones, the Giants paid boatloads of money for him to specifically be their future, and now they're just fucked up.
Anybody whose arm wasn't amputated was better than Daniel Jones last year.
The last thing I'll say, and then I'll let Anthony finish this up, is if they go 8-9, Douglas needs to be fired. Saleh needs to be fired. Aaron Rodgers has to go if they go 8-9. That's just my opinion on the whole matter. And if they completely lay an egg, they need to go find a new quarterback. Because Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be the Super Bowl or bust guy. He's going to take us to 2 Super Bowls.
Well, you know what, though? I kind of like the whole Super Bowl or bust thing. I like the adrenaline rush that we're getting from this.
So we haven't made the playoffs in how many years?
What, in 13 years. 13 years. It's been.
I would take making a playoff run first. Just getting there.
Right, but Aaron Rodgers gives us the best. This is the best chance we've had of getting to the playoffs in my lifetime.
We'll see. All right, Anthony, finish us off here.
Well, after hearing me speak, you're going to think I'm the one that's a Jets fan and not the Bills fan. But I actually think the Jets are going to be really good this year. I think this may be the year where maybe it all kind of comes together. I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a lot more healthier. He's going to play obviously a lot longer. I honestly really like their roster. Obviously, you already stated that they have a great defense. I mean, you really can't say anything bad about it. Yeah, you may not have Hassan Reddick, but they've been drafting a lot of edge rushers over the last couple of years. You got Jermaine Johnson, you got Will McDonald. I think those guys are talented. Obviously, Quinnen Williams is one of the best defensive tackles in football. You got one of the top linebacking duos with C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams. Sauce Gardner's got to be the best corner in football, in my opinion. So their defense is going to be there. I think Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers has top 10 receiver potential. Breece Hall's a great running back, and I think he's going to have a good complement in Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is a huge running back at over 240 pounds. He's only 20 years of age. He went to college at 17 years old, and he's been, a great college player every single year he's played. So I think he's going to be a good complement to Breece Hall. And I honestly think the Jets are going to probably be a 10, 11-win team. And I'm probably going to pick them to win the division this year.
Whoa.
And well, I'm looking through the Jets schedule right now because I never really went through it with like a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here.
But I'm looking at like a lot of these games I think are very winnable and almost easy. I wouldn't say easy, but like there's not many games are actually easy. But I mean, we went up to the Broncos for the first 4 games. After that, they play the Vikings. Only downside is that that's in London. But that's a downside for the Vikings too. Keep in mind, their starting quarterback is Sam Darnold.
Don't even get me started, please.
It would be a very Jets thing to lose to their former quarterback. The flip side is it's Sam Darnold. So
there will be a rant. I'll just warn you right now. There will be a rant of epic proportions if they lose to Sam Darnold.
The Vikings offensive line is a mess.
and after that they're playing the Steelers. Only downside to that is that it's a road game.
I mean, the issue, like I think,
you don't even know who's going to play quarterback for the Steelers.
That's true. But the one issue I would have is when they come back from London and they have to play the Bills. I think that's going to be a tough.
Well, but the Jets they're playing at home, and the Jets tend to play the Bills very well. Yep. But that is a tough game. I say the Jets probably split against the Bills and the Dolphins. That's probably what ends up happening.
It'll probably be like the Jets win at home against the Bills, and the Bills win at home against the Jets. That's essentially how it's been the last couple of years.
All right, let's move along here to our next team, the Dolphins. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the Dolphins in the offseason. Obviously, Tua with the contract, I think it was, $212 million over 4 years. A lot of questions on whether they should have paid him or not. Then you had the whole controversy with Brian Flores and Tua and the Dan Le Batard show, and Stephen A. basically saying that Dan Le Batard's being a homer, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. I'm not going to bore you with that. I did a whole rant on that on my show, Empty the Bench, if you really want to see that. This is a good team. Oh, right. And OBJ was another addition to this team. Thank you, Ben. Even though he's kind of been getting into it with people on social media over this offseason on whether he's going to play, just get him away from social media, please. Just go play football.
Take the phone away.
Take the phone away. Exactly.
OBJ needs to be like Amish. That's what he needs to be.
He's like Antonio Brown of this year's current.
Oh, God. Antonio Brown. Yikes.
But I
look at this team, like, they didn't really change, I feel like, a whole heck of a lot. I know there was a lot of additions and departures.
They're awesome.
I look at this team and I'm like, okay, do we really see them going much further? Like, they have good regular season, but then they can't prove it in the playoffs. Now, they lost in, what are they calling it, the 30 below game in the playoffs. And
the thing is, they've never shown in past years that they perform well in like 40 degrees. Like we saw, like the last couple of years, we saw last year with them. Sorry to cut you off, Nick.
Yeah,
they did really well in September and October, which is fine. You obviously want to start really well in terms of the regular season, but what does it show when it matters most? Crunch time and the playoffs. And the Dolphins did not show that in either part last year. I mean, obviously, the Chiefs, they were going to go to Arrowhead regardless if it was -3 degrees or if it was, 30 degrees. I mean, maybe they've had a closer game, but it wouldn't have mattered.
No, I agree on that one for sure. This is going to be an interesting team to watch in this division. Anthony, what do you think about the Dolphins?
I kind of agree with like a lot of what you said. They definitely had a lot of subtractions and additions will kind of, cancel each other out. I know they did lose Howard at corner, but I think Kendall Fuller might be a slight upgrade. What scares me, though, is their pass rush. I know Andrew Van Ginkel's not a guy a lot of people talk about, but I think he was a really good player for them off the edge. I think losing him is actually going to hurt a lot more than what people are thinking. Obviously, you do have Bradley Chubb and you do have Phillips, but those guys struggle to stay on the field a lot. And I know you got Trop Robinson, but the way he's built, he doesn't seem like an every down player. He's probably going to be more of just a pass rush specialist. So if they have injuries to either Phillips or Chubb, they're really going to, struggle at depth with that pass rush. Offensively, though, they're definitely one of the most explosive, if not the most explosive offense in football. I think you got the best running back duo in football with Mostert and Achane, and I think you got the best receiver duo with Tyreek Hill and Waddle. So the offense is going to be very, very explosive, and it's going to be built on speed. But obviously, we know that only, helps you in September and October. That's not going to necessarily help you when you get in those cold weather games, and it's about physicality on the offensive defensive line. So I think it'll be pretty much the same season as they've been having. They'll probably win 10 or 11 games, probably finish first or second in the division, and will probably be out in the first round of the playoffs.
Nick?
Well, you guys are talking about like being able to do it in the playoffs. I mean, they have to make it first.
Yeah.
They're in a tough, like we're counting our chickens before they hatch. It seems like. I mean, they're in it. I'm not saying they're not good enough to make the playoffs, but they are in the tougher, or at least last year was the tougher of the two conferences, and are in the toughest division. You're going up against the Jets and the Bills. Their offense is great. There's no doubt about that. They're almost built sort of like a college team, like a lot of college teams are. Like they can score a lot of points. But they only play in nice weather. Except a lot of college teams down south, they never play. Some of them never play in cold weather.
Except for the crossover now with all the divisions and stuff.
Yeah, it's a little different now. But like a lot of SEC teams for years never played in cold weather. Seldom played in cold weather. But the Dolphins have to actually do it. They have to play the Jets, and they have to go. They have to do it at least 3 times in their own division, play in very cold weather, and so that obviously could be a big problem for them. Also, the fact that their defense really hasn't been great. So I think that they're a good team. I just think that they're in the wrong situation. If they were like in the AFC South, I would feel a little bit different about it because they wouldn't really have to play in cold weather as often, and their competition wouldn't be as steep. But because of their competition, it's like I don't think it looks as bright for them.
No,
I mean, even if they went to another division, though, Nick, even if they got to the playoffs, they more likely than not would have to face a team more likely than not in a cold climate as well.
Yeah, that's true. Although, like, the truth is they lost to the people are talking about how they lost to the Chiefs. It's like they probably would have lost to the Chiefs anyway. Even
I don't think the climate would have mattered, to be quite
right.
honest.
Like they would have lost to the Chiefs anyway. Like I'm not really that I'm not that obsessed with it. But the point is, I don't like to obsess over what do you do when you make the playoffs. You haven't proven it here. When you have to actually make it first.
Yeah,
and
no, that's
not
a good
always
point.
Easy.
That's a good point. Quickly, looking at the Vegas Insider number, I think this number is kind of low for the Dolphins. It's 8.5 wins. What do we think, Nick? You start.
Over.
Yeah, I would take
8.5 would be 500.
Yeah,
so
I would
they're
take the
above
over.
average for sure.
Yeah, I would say above it. Anthony.
Yeah, I'm going over as well. One last thing I do want to say, I forgot to mention, their biggest loss was definitely Christian Wilkins. He's a great defensive tackle. That's definitely going to hurt as well. I just wanted to get the end there, but I'm going to take the over as well.
Ben?
The over, too. I think that they are like Chiefs and Ravens up with wins, but I also don't think that they're bad in terms of 500. They're kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I would take them as slightly over at the very least, even. Like, I think they'll be over 500. Like we said, we have no idea if they're going to make the playoffs or if they will be able to perform in the playoffs. Obviously, that doesn't determine an over-under number, obviously, but I would say slightly over. They might have a chance to win 9 or 10 games. All right, let's go to Anthony's team, the Bills. An interesting team to watch. They had some cap issues at the beginning of the offseason, and when I mean cap issues, they had severe cap issues. I think they were like 50 or 60 million over the cap at some point. And they really needed to fix some of that issue. So, Anthony, lead us off here.
Yeah, it's definitely not maybe as an exciting, start to the season, heading into the year as it was previous years. But I do think, maybe getting rid of Stephon Diggs, maybe addition by subtraction. And I honestly think if I could sum up the way I'm feeling heading into the season, I think it's going to be where, you take one step back to ultimately take 2 steps forward next season. I think there's going to be, obviously some growing pains at wide receiver. I do think Keenan Coleman's a very talented guy that they brought in, but at the end of the day, he is a rookie receiver, and he's not going to be no Jamar Chase that's going to come in and dominate. It's going to take him some time, particularly to get used to, separating against NFL corners. That's one thing he definitely struggled in college. I think Curtis Samuel, who was a former player of Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills, he had his best season when Joe Brady was coaching him as the coordinator. So I think he's a really good addition. Obviously, there's some defensive changes. Obviously, they got rid of Tre'Davious White. We obviously don't have our 2 great safeties in Poyer and Hyde, but they did bring in Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop's a very, very talented safety from Utah. He's a very, very long safety, and his best trait is covering tight ends. Bill's tight end, Dalton Kincaid, said going up against him in practice in college, Sometimes he got the best of Kincaid, and that's saying a lot. So I definitely think this is going to be a step back here. I'm thinking maybe 9 or 10 wins. I honestly probably see them maybe being that third team, because we talk about the big three in this division with the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bills. I think maybe this may be the year where the Bills may be finishing at that third spot. But, Josh Allen's going to do the best he can to carry this team as much as he can. I don't care what anybody says. I think he's the best player in the NFL. It's not his fault of why they can't get rid of the Chiefs. It's the fact that their defense comes up short every time. But that's not his fault. You maybe also have to question, what the head coach's game planning is for that as well. But I do think it's going to be a competitive season. Maybe they'll sneak in as a wild card team. But it's definitely going to be some development this year for the Bills.
Now, I can't remember because this happened during this season. Who was the coach that went viral for throwing the headset and doing that stuff in the coordinator?
That was Ken Dorsey, our offensive coordinator that we thankfully fired during the season. And then once Joe Brady took over, you can see the difference. Once he took over for the Bills, Josh Allen became more of a distributor. You can see Stephon Diggs' targets went down, and Josh Allen became more of a quarterback. He wasn't forcing the ball, and he's giving it to the open man. And I really think that, got the best out of Allen, and that definitely gives me hope for what the future of this offense can look like with the combination of Joe Brady and Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I've always taken the Bills as a fierce competitor, as a Jet fan, every year. Like, they've kicked our tails the last couple of years.
I wouldn't even call them competitors. They were just better.
Well, you know what I mean.
One last thing I want to say that's probably the biggest news that just happened recently. Something that's definitely, I think, going to hurt and probably more solidify them being that third team is the loss of Matt Milano. Matt Milano is the heart and soul of the Buffalo Bills defense. We see when he plays, he really is one of the elite top linebackers in the game, but he gets hurt a lot. He's a smaller guy, and he plays with such aggressiveness that it tends to lead him to injuries. And that's why we see him get hurt. And the fact that he's going to be out to maybe December or the playoffs is going to really, really hurt the Bills defense. And I think that's going to be, probably the downfall of the team is going to be their struggles on defense because of that loss. They did draft Dorian Williams last year. So hopefully Dorian Williams can step up. They do got Terrell Bernard as well, but you can't replace a guy like Matt Milano.
Right. And we'll see how this team goes. I'm kind of worried of Josh Allen a little bit too, because of the off and on injuries a little bit too that he had last year. Just keeping him healthy, because I think he got sacked a ton towards the end of the season. They weren't keeping him on his feet. And then just some of those horrible throws at the end of the year causing picks. I mean, didn't he have an obscene amount of picks, if I'm not mistaken, last year?
Yeah, he definitely tends to turn the ball over a lot. He doesn't do it in the playoffs. If you look at the playoffs numbers, he never turns the ball over. So the turnovers is not what's costing the Bills at the end of the year. Right. But it's definitely alarming. I think what it is I think the Bills have put way too much on Josh Allen's plate, and they expect Josh Allen to be Superman every game. He's basically got to be their lead runner. I know James Cook isn't all pro, but Josh Allen, makes that team go. He has to put the team on his back, and sometimes, he's got to go, head up with linebackers to get that extra yardage in. Sometimes that leads them to, injuries, and sometimes when they really need a play and they're losing, he'll force a pass here and there, and sometimes that gets him in trouble.
We're talking really quickly, Anthony, about force feeding. As much as Stephon Diggs is going to hurt, I do think that's a positive in a way of like you're going to look at this receiving core and it's not going to be like you're forcing it to this so-and-so guy. And I think that's part of it, that maybe some of the turnovers, he was just thinking, I just got to get it to this guy and just hope for the best. And as much as that is a positive to have, it's also a negative to have, because defenses are going to start to kind of catch up and stuff's going to start to happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Josh Allen doesn't overrun the ball, I guess I can call it, and he's not put in the danger zone, like, they should be okay.
He's so strong, though, too.
No, that's true.
I would say, if you look at the way they built their receiving core, they didn't build it by a true number one receiver. They kind of built it like a basketball team where they have a bunch of different guys who could do different things. You got Keenan Coleman, who's going to be the big possession receiver. Curtis Samuel's going to be a little gadget guy, and Khalil Shakir's going to be your slot guy. So they got a bunch of different guys with different skill sets, and I think that could also help Josh Allen as well.
Well, so I just looked it up. He was number 2 in interceptions last year behind Sam Howell with 18, which is kind of high, but usually the best quarterbacks tend to throw a lot of interceptions. I mean, for context, Mahomes threw like 14. So most of the best quarterbacks tend to throw a lot of interceptions.
And look at his touchdowns. So look at his touchdown interception ratio if you add all his total touchdowns in as well.
I think sometimes what happens with quarterbacks is sometimes they force a throw because they're so under the gun to put touchdowns and points up on the board. They don't think about throwing a ball and turning it over. I think that's kind of what Josh Allen, I think, kind of ran into, what you were talking about. The guy's got to be Superman, so he thinks he's got to throw a ball 40, 50 yards down the field rather than maybe running the ball and getting the first down.
But sometimes it's not because he thinks it. Sometimes he actually does have to be Superman.
No. That's what I'm saying. Like that sometimes he's forcing a 40 or 50-yard pass when all he has to do is look in front of him for a dink and dunk for a first down.
Well, that's what Joe Brady did too, was he was deciding to let Josh Allen distribute more to his backs as well. Dorsey was more of like, all right, you're going to go deep. And I think that was kind of partly of his struggles too, because defenses also scheme that way as well too, of, okay, if you're just going to be a chuck and go all the way down type of guy, defenses are going to play, man to man. They're going to play two safeties more likely back. If you're going to be more of the side to side with your running backs, specifically the Bills tend to have as well, that's when things kind of be like, all right, Josh can run the ball. He could do a zone. He could do a zone read by the pass. He could do a zone read by the run, and then other stuff can kind of lead by the way.
All right, Anthony, we got your record already. All right, Nick, and Ben, who do you have? What do you have for records here for the Bills?
You can go, Nick.
I would say 10-7. I would say 10 is maybe slightly worse than they were last year.
Okay, Ben.
I'm going to go actually 10-7 as well. I hate to copy Nick, but I do think overall they're a good enough team that will definitely be a playoff team. I do wonder, though, about Diggs' loss, how much Josh Allen is going to perform to that next level with kind of I'm not saying a low complementary guys of weapons around, because I do think that's a bonus as well. But the Matt Milano injury, I think, is a massive, massive loss, because you saw what the run defense looked like when he was out. It did not look great. And obviously that's not a, harp on Anthony's team whatsoever, but it just the way it looked kind of at the end of the year. And I do think that's somewhat of a tough thing to see. Gabe Davis, too, I think is low-key a loss as well. I think that Gabe Davis did do a lot of great things. Now, I will say that I do think the guy that will replace Gabe Davis, if I had to pick, is probably going to be Keon Coleman, just because I do think that Gabe Davis was more of the lawn threat type of guy, even though he didn't get all the catches.
And I think Gabe Davis needed a change of scenery. I think what his problem was mental. He couldn't, catch the ball and really focus. And I think after a while, after the fans, really getting on him for it, I think he just got to the point where he really needed a change of scenery. And thank God the Bills got Keon Coleman, because the best thing he does is catch the ball. And when the ball hits his hands, he doesn't drop it.
That's right.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Gabe Davis, wasn't he one of the league leaders in drops, if I'm not mistaken, last year in the NFL? I think.
Yeah, he's always been up there in drops.
So kind of reminds me a little bit of T.O. If you remember back in the day, the amount of drops. I forgot if it was with the Eagles or somebody else.
Had problems with drops too, like when he was younger. So, I mean, it happens to the best of them. But I do agree with Anthony. He needed to change his standard, and I think he's going to play more of a factor over in Jacksonville.
So we basically. Oh, I didn't give it over. I think they're going to win 10. I agree with the two of you. I think they're going to go 10-7. I think the number over under was 9.5. So that's we're basically on the number. Essentially,
I said 9 or 10, but if I had to pick one, I would probably say 10 wins. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I know it's hard for it to happen, but definitely more common with a 17 playoff. I wouldn't be surprised if this division produces 3 playoff teams. I think you might get one of these teams win the division. The other 2 might get 2 of those 3 wild card spots.
It's like baseball now, with the way that the baseball has the wild card 3rd spot. That it might be like that team that gets in just because.
All right, so AFC East prediction time here. Nick, you go first. How do you have the whole division layout?
Oh, you like the standings?
Yeah.
I say Bills first, Jets second, Dolphins third, Patriots last.
Okay. Anthony?
I'm going to go Jets first, Miami second, Bills third, Patriots fourth.
Okay. Ben?
This is tough, because I think the Dolphins and the Bills could honestly have the same win total here. I think that both teams could be at both 10 wins. The Jets, I mean, obviously the Patriots are last. I'll put that already there. It's tough. But if I had to go with it, I'm going to lean my way towards Josh Allen in terms of the Bills. I have them probably at first. I'm gonna go Dolphins second, but they're going to have the same win total if you guys are kind of getting into what I'm getting to.
So I don't know what the tiebreaker is on the top of the divisions. Is it divisional record? I don't remember exactly what the.
I think it is division record.
Because I think both teams, I see the Jets, I know the Dolphins and the Bills finishing 10-7. I got the Jets at 9 wins and 9-8. So like right behind them at third. And then I got the Patriots at 5-12.
That's interesting. Okay.
It's going to be really tight because I just think that when you look at it, I don't think that there's that clear-cut type of team that's in the top 3 despite them being really good to kind of pull away. You guys kind of get into it.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Dolphins at 11-6. I think they're going to win the division. I think the Bills are right behind it at 10-7. And then the Jets, like I said, I think they're going to be under 500 because Aaron Rodgers is going to get hurt at 8-9. And then obviously the Patriots loading up the basement. Who knows what their record's going to be? If they win 5 games, I think that's a good season for the Pats this year. So that's how I see it. All right, moving on to the AFC North. A lot of good teams in this division. The Bengals, the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens. And right off the bat, we're going to start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, some drama going on. Jamar Chase's contract situation, now with the whole CeeDee Lamb contract being done, will this end in a holdout? End the holdout? We don't know. I don't know what you guys think. Ben, what do you think about the Bengals?
Yeah, I've kind of liked them. I wouldn't say I like the Bengals from afar, but I've always kind of respected them because I have a ton of family in that area. So I kind of have a little bit of an idea kind of what they're looking at. And the Jamar Chase situation, I'm not really too worried about with them overall. I think that he needs to be out there throughout the whole entire season. And then T. Higgins is going to be a free agent this upcoming season, so he's going to get the bag. He's going to probably play the best football that he's probably played most of his career. The one thing I just worry about, and it's been a massive thing, at least the last couple years, has been Joe Burrow's health and the offensive line. Because the change on the win record drastic changes massively if Joe Burrow is on the field for the whole entire season and if it's not. I will say Joe Mixon moving on is a massive loss. He played a massive factor in that running game. So I'm probably assuming they're going to go probably more pass heavy than anything, even though they're a very pass heavy type of team. But you look at the NFL, you need to have that balance. So that's a massive thing that I look at. DJ Reader, defensively, that's a massive loss in that interior. Tyler Boyd, that's a wide receiver 3. That's a massive loss. Jermaine Byrne, I think, could be an interesting one. I liked him from Alabama. But I do think that, guys like Von Bell coming back, that's a great get for them. Zach Moss, he played really well with the Colts last year. They got some pieces. I just don't know specifically how it's going to be as together, per se. I mean, you can kind of say that for a lot of teams. But I think Zach Taylor is a good enough coach for this team right now. I mean, 9-8 kind of sounds right because I really would feel better in terms of that win total being even more, but I really worry about the health of Joe. As much as I love Burrow, I just worry about that offensive line being able to keep him upright. They lost Jonah Williams, who's been kind of a glue guy over there too. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of good pieces for the Bengals, but I also think that, they just need to have all their pieces healthy or else it could go really south fast.
Yeah, this is an interesting team. I'm going to save mine for last just because I have another hot take on the Bengals this year. So
I wonder if it's pro or anti-Bengals.
Well, we'll see. Nick, go ahead.
Well, talking about the total wins, the over/under is actually 10.5. I just checked.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. That's crazy. I think losing Joe Mixon is obviously a huge deal. He was their best running back, and that obviously doesn't help. The flip side is there's a good chance Joe Burrow will be at least a little bit healthier this year than he was last year.
You hope.
But I said there's a good chance. I don't know. Ultimately, it all really kind of depends on how healthy Joe Burrow is. And even if Joe Burrow is fully healthy, they're still in a very tough division. They're still in the same division as the Ravens, who now have Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry was like the most impactful running back we've seen. He was one of the few running backs who was able to carry his own offense. And now paired with Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, it doesn't really help that they're in such a strong. It doesn't help them that they're in such a strong division.
And the Browns even too. We can't overlook the Browns.
I didn't even bring them up yet. Yeah, and not even to mention the Browns. So
the Browns are no slouch anymore either.
No?
I guess it's almost in some ways similar to how I feel about the Dolphins. Like, they're not a bad team, but they're in such a tough division that they're put behind the 8 ball a little bit. But yes, I think losing Joe Mixon is a pretty big deal. Losing your number 1 running back.
And if Joe Burrow can stay on his feet.
Right. We don't even know how healthy Joe Burrow is.
Because from what I understand reports-wise, he didn't really do much work in the offseason at all.
Well,
Yeah,
he got interviewed during a preseason game and apparently just didn't want to play a lot during the preseason, but he did say that according to him, that he's the best he's felt in a long time. I don't know in terms of if he wants to just say that.
Okay, but what does that even mean? That means nothing until he goes out and plays a game against him.
Because he hasn't felt good in a long time, so.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying is that
for a while he was constantly hurt.
When an athlete says that they've felt the best they have in a long time, until they go out on the field and play, it's really not going to matter. All right, Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things you guys said. Obviously, it comes down to Joe Burrow's health. When he's upright, he's right there in that conversation for the second best quarterback in football, but he really hasn't been upright for a majority of his career. Now, a lot of that, I don't think you could probably say any of that's really his fault. A lot of that had to do with the offensive line. I do think this may be probably one of the best offensive lines he's had. Not saying it's great, but it's probably maybe the best offensive line he's had in Cincinnati. If you look at Mims and if you look at Trent Brown, those guys are massive human beings. Adarius Mims and Trent Brown are both probably 6'7" plus, over 330. Those are very, big tackles to have for Joe Burrow. So even if Trent Brown's a little on the older side, just having 2 big guys like that, can only help you. DJ Reader was definitely a huge loss for their, defensive line. Obviously, Sheldon Rankins will, have the job of replacing him. I do think that's a downgrade. But I like their secondary a lot. They have a really young secondary that they've put a lot of assets in over the last couple of years. Cam Taylor-Bright is a young, good corner. You got, DJ Turner, Mike Hilton, a veteran of the game. And they did bring in Geno Stone. Geno Stone was one of the best safeties in football last year for the Baltimore Ravens. He's going to pair up with the young guy, Jordan Battle. So I do think the Bengals are going to have a great secondary. And we've seen when the Bengals were at their best and when they beat the Chiefs, the best part of their defense was their secondary. They did have a solid defense when they were at their best. So if Joe Burrow can stay healthy, that defense is going to be improved, particularly in the secondary. And, you got Higgins and Jamar Chase both playing for money. So, you're going to get the best out of both those guys. I understand they don't got the 3-headed monster with Tyler Boyd. Jermaine Burton should service them as well. I'm going to take the under probably if it's 10.5. I think they probably are a 10-win team. I think they'll probably be one of those few wild card teams, as I stated before. But I'm going to go 10 wins for the Bengals this year.
Okay. So here's my thoughts on the Bengals. Now, people thought I was silly last year when I said that they were going to finish at the bottom of their division, which they ended up doing. Now, obviously, Burrow got hurt. There were some issues with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins with injuries. Now, I'm going to play this sound before I give you what I think. Because this is a serious hot take. I think the Bengals are going to finish under 500 this year.
Okay.
I think that.
I don't think it's that hot of a take.
No, I think they're going to finish like 7-10.
Is this with Burrow even being healthy?
I don't think Burrow is going to be healthy. I think the line is going to get
prediction. His prediction is Burrow will not be healthy.
I think he's going to get killed by his offensive line like he did last year. They couldn't keep him up. What makes you think I have any belief that they're going to keep him up on his feet this year? And Burrow, first of all, is going to be ginger running around the field, protecting himself. I think that's going to lead to more interceptions this year because he's going to be more protective than actually stepping up into the pocket and throwing the football. I think that's going to be a problem. So my hot take is I think they could finish 7-10 or 8-9 this year. And I think they're not going to be a good team. People are going to get mad. Last year, my clip went viral because people said I was nuts over saying the Bengals were going to be a bad team. Where did they finish last year? They didn't make it. Didn't make the playoffs.
What was their record?
It's 9-8.
9-8. Okay.
But they missed the playoffs because Burrow was not around most of it. And I just don't think he's going to be healthy. So I see 7-10 and 8-9 at the highest this season.
Well, who's even their backup? Because I remember last year they had an awful backup situation too. And like I think Nick D and I were talking on one of the Moving the Goalpost episodes. A backup quarterback is actually underrated to have because for some odd reason your starter goes down. You need to at least have maybe somebody that could come in and do the job, and maybe that could keep you.
Jake Browning.
Jake Browning had a couple good games, but yeah, he's definitely not probably one of the elite backups. He had a couple good moments last year, but definitely when more games he had and the more game film came out, he started to get exposed a little bit.
Right.
I'm just worried that, like I said, Burrow's not going to stay on his feet, and again, his offensive line is going to kill him, and I think he's going to miss 2 to 3 games at least this season due to whether it's prior injuries or you can have a situation again where they hide his injury and then they're going to have to go and investigate it again. I don't know if you guys remember that from last year, do you?
I remember because I bet on the Bengals. I was the one who I got screwed.
And they refused to pay the bets back. I remember that also.
Yeah. And they got in trouble for that.
Because it cost the gambling companies a lot of money because of that.
Forget the gambling companies. How about the bettors?
No, but my point is, I think eventually they had to pay back on some of it. DraftKings refused. No, I thought reportedly FanDuel did, but DraftKings refused. Like, they don't pay back on bets, at least unless there's a massive injury involved.
That's a pretty massive one. It's the quarterback.
Of course it is, because I think you and I both bet on that game, actually.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Everyone's going to get on me again, but I don't care. All right. Moving on to the Steelers, which, again, very interesting offseason quarterback battle. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, a lot of drama going on here. I don't know. This is an interesting one. Nick, what do you think about the Steelers?
Well, I think that any team that has a quarterback controversy usually is not in a very good position.
Agreed.
Especially when they're surrounded by quarterbacks that aren't just especially when they're surrounded by teams in their division that aren't just non-quarterback controversies, but good quarterbacks. That's obviously, I mean, like they look like the worst team in the AFC North right now. There's really no other way to put it. I mean, maybe Russell Wilson will make a little bit of a comeback, but we'll have to wait and see.
We can't be expecting the Superman Russell Wilson from back in the day.
No, we're not going to get the Seahawks Russell Wilson.
No.
Obviously. But, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be – every little thing is going to be like, well, Russell Wilson has kind of a bad game, throws an every time – like Russell Wilson might throw an interception, the camera's going to pan to Justin Fields.
He's the most expensive, second-ranked quarterback in the NFL right now.
Yeah, so it's just going to be like – that's going to be the whole storyline. Russell Wilson makes some type of mistake, and then they're going to go to they're going to be like, ooh, Justin Fields is always an option.
That's going to be so annoying all
year. It's always
year.
going to be floated. It's funny. They went 10-7 last year. It doesn't feel like they did.
Well, they cleared out.
I think they're going to be substantially worse this year.
They cleared out their full quarterback room.
I mean, you play who you play, but if I recall, I don't think they played anybody that special. So they kind of got back in kind of the way that they did because of that. They just kind of got the favor of it, and their defense was able to win them some games too.
It's a good point. I mean, like I said, if you look at their departures, they cleared out their quarterback room completely. And usually teams don't win the year after they clear out their full quarterback room. Usually. It's not a good look, at least. I look at Mike Tomlin, who basically during the whole offseason was basically saying nothing. Like, he wants nothing to do with the media whatsoever. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world because we have no idea what's going on with the Steelers whatsoever. But I don't know. This seems kind of is a big question mark for me. Anthony, what do you think about the Steelers?
Yeah, a lot of Pittsburgh fans aren't going to like what I'm about to say. I love Mike Tomlin. It seems like no matter what Pittsburgh roster is, he always has those boys ready to play, and they're always competitive. I know I don't think Mike Tomlin's ever had a losing season, but I think it's about to happen this year. I think they're definitely going to be probably the last place team in their division. Their division's stacked. It was the best division in football last year. It's going to be one of the better ones this year. But with the current quarterback situation with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, it's going to be hard to compete. And they definitely, I don't think they have an established receiver outside of George Pickens. So that's going to be some question marks. They have a young, unproven offensive line. So it's not like their quarterback's going to have a lot to work with. They do got a good running back duo with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. I do like that. Obviously, their defense is always going to be good. But you're talking about Joe Burrow staying healthy. TJ Watt's a guy that, has got to stay healthy as well. He's the guy that when he's on the field, I think he's the best defensive player in football. And when he's on the field, it seems like Pittsburgh tends to always win. But when he's not on the field, Pittsburgh tends to, lose a lot. They did bring in Patrick Queen. They definitely needed an inside linebacker. That's definitely going to help. I do like Joey Porter Jr. I think he's a solid young corner. Mika Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties. But, man, I think this is going to be a long season for Pittsburgh. I think they're probably, just because of Tomlin, they'll be competitive. I'm going to go probably about 7 wins. I think they're going to finish 4th place. And I wouldn't be surprised if they decide at the end of the year to have a change of scenery and maybe decide mutually to go part ways with Mike Tomlin. Not saying that Mike Tomlin deserves to be fired, but I think he's been there for a while. And I think after this year, after having his first losing season, I think it's time to just have a fresh start in Pittsburgh.
That's a little shocking.
I was
kind of
fire coaches in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. I mean, I don't think you're 100% wrong by any means.
I didn't think he's fired. I said mutually part ways at the end of the year. You know how they have those little we had a meeting, we mutually part ways,
like Belichick.
something like that.
The Belichick.
Mutually parted ways.
Yeah.
The whole, we'll let you announce it however you want, that we decided to just not renew.
Which usually is a nice way of saying fired. Tom.
There's the door.
I feel like there's a better chance. Sorry, cut you on, Nick. I feel like there's a better chance Tomlin retires, if anything.
I don't see him retiring anytime soon.
50. He's not old at all.
I could see him going to a broadcast booth.
I think retires because I don't know if he wants to coach somewhere else. That's the thing. I think he's just Pittsburgh is a spot.
So you're saying he's an old-fashioned type where he likes the organization. Well, that's a question if he actually likes the organization or not.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Likes him enough to keep coaching there.
Well, I think because he's as consistent. What is this streak? It's like 15 consecutive seasons of 500 or better, or something like that. It's an incredible record to manage to be 500 or better, 50 consecutive seasons. That's why he's kept the job as long as he has, with all the crap that he's had to deal with teams over the year. I mean, Kenny Pickett was a complete abomination a season ago, and then he got hurt. He was a massive disappointment out of college.
He was the head coach since 2007.
I know, that's crazy, right? I mean,
he might end up being like another Marvin Lewis. Actually, no, he wouldn't because he won a Super Bowl. But
Marvin Lewis, that I don't think even got a playoff win, right?
No, so I guess it's a little different. But
didn't he sign a contract or something after the fact, towards the end of his career? Also, that was controversial, or whatever. I can't remember. I thought it was him, but I don't know. The Steelers team is a mess. That's the nicest way I can really put it. All right, so let's move on here to the Browns. So the Browns, again, a lot of storylines around them. Deshaun Watson back and healthy. Just looking at their roster, a lot of changes. Guys, what do you think about this roster? Anthony, what do you think about the Browns?
I still think they're going to have a solid defense, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson hasn't looked like the Deshaun Watson we saw in Houston. He's been a shell of himself, and it looks like his confidence is completely gone. And was it just me, or did it seem like they may have been a better team when they had Joe Flacco when they're than Deshaun Watson?
Was he comeback player of the year? I don't even remember.
Yeah, Joe Flacco helped them get into the playoffs, and I think Watson was their playoff quarterback. But
which was dumb, in my opinion.
But yeah, I still don't think Watson's gonna go back to form. I still think he's gonna struggle. Nick Chubb, as great as he is, he has a very, very severe knee injury to come back from. I think they just reported that he's gonna start the season off on the PUP list, so they won't have him for 4 games, and he's the heart and soul of their offense. I do like their receiving duo with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. Those guys are very good at separating and getting open, so that should definitely help out Deshaun Watson. Jerome Ford is a good backup running back for Chubb, but like I said, I think the offense is really going to hold them back. And I love their secondary. Obviously, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson Jr., Greg Newsome, they're solid, but their offense will hold them back. And honestly, I think they're probably going to fall back to a 7 to 8 win ball club.
That's interesting. I will put it out there. I think that Deshaun Watson will be the most expensive quarterback bust in the history of the NFL. I'm willing to sit on that statement right now.
I mean, you can't really call him a bust. A bust is like Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold.
I'm talking about for the amount of contractual sake. He is the biggest bust.
And draft capital.
Draft capital. You're right, because of the massive amount that the Browns gave up to get him from the Texans. I mean, what was it, like 4 or 5 first-round picks or something to get him? It was an insane
I think it may have
deal.
been like 3 first-round picks, and then they had to give him like $250 full and guaranteed, right?
Yeah, well, for the contract's sake, he got over $300 million total guaranteed. His contract was fully guaranteed, which was the scary part. I don't know what the Browns owners, what Haslam was thinking, giving him a fully guaranteed contract. Do I think they're a good team? Yeah, I would say they're a good team. I think they're going to improve. I think the defense was great. I mean, they got to improve upon that. I know they were 11-6 again in a tough division with the Ravens and all that. I just don't know. Like, is Deshaun Watson going to carry this team? That's the question mark. Will he be able to be healthy and do what they need? So
I guess it's similar to the question mark about Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I would say so.
Not really, though, because when Joe Burrow's on the field, he's actually good.
That's a good point. You're right. I would take Joe Burrow over Deshaun Watson every day of the week.
I would too. I'm just saying it's kind of similar.
I agree. I think they are very similar. I mean, I'm looking at their numbers. What is it, 7.5 is their number. Do we think they'll win 8 games? I think they'll win 8 games. I think that's not even a question.
That seems very low.
Now, I'm trying to pull up their schedule. I don't know.
They give me 9-8 vibes. Like trying to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't think that's the issue.
Because I do like their defense a lot. I do. I really like that front a lot. And another thing, too, guys, to keep in mind, the Browns have one of the best offensive lines in the game. And if Nick Chubb does come back, which I know it's only probably for a couple games, if Deshaun Watson, maybe they make a quarterback switch throughout the season, Jameis Winston, I mean, I'm not saying Jameis is a great quarterback, but would you rather have Jameis or would you rather have Deshaun Watson at this point in time?
Take your pick. They're both bad.
Deshaun Watson, easily.
Well, the problem is you have two.
Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson? That's not even a question.
No, I'm just saying they're both bad. I wouldn't want either of them, to be quite honest.
I'd much rather have Deshaun Watson.
I'd probably. Well, Deshaun Watson hasn't really.
No team that's in a good situation has Jameis Winston as their quarterback.
True.
On the
But
bench.
all I'm saying is, like, if the quarterback situation was any better, this team would be a lot better. Just given, kind of like the Steelers, they just don't have the best quarterback situation there. Everything else looks pretty good.
I was going to say Jameis Winston is better off going to the market and stealing crabs more than stealing touchdowns. I mean, sorry, that's an old joke. If people don't realize what
stealing touchdowns,
you know what I mean.
Like
Howard
stealing
Holman
wins. Did okay behind
stealing
Lamar
wins
Jackson for a couple games, and he's their third guy. I mean, I prefer him over Jameis.
I mean, I'm looking at their first 4 games. So they're home for Dallas, at Jacksonville, home for the Giants, on the road in Vegas for the Raiders.
I think that's 2-2. I think they'll win the last 2.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you a little more, the Commanders at home, on the road in Washington, on the road in Philadelphia, then home for Cincy.
I feel very trap game-ish with Washington. I think Washington's going to be a lot better than people think.
I agree, too. I think they're going to be better than people.
So right now they're saying the over-under for Cleveland is 7.5.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be an 8-win team, go 8-9. So I take the over on that then.
Yeah, I could see them being. I'm actually on the same path. I think they're going to be 8-9. I don't know if that's really playoff bound, depending on where they sit in the standings.
I just think there's too many great quarterbacks and there's too many great teams in the AFC. It's just I just think for the Cleveland Browns, it's going to be hard to get into the playoffs again. With all these great quarterbacks.
Is it scary to say, like you were saying earlier when we started with the Browns, that it's actually a downgrade to go to Deshaun Watson over Flacco, who actually had some team chemistry and was leading this team? Or no?
It definitely goes to show you, where Deshaun Watson is now. I do think Deshaun Watson has to obviously be the starter. He's the more talented guy. He's the guy making all the money. And, I just think maybe Joe Flacco caught lightning in a bottle. He's got that veteran mindset. He's won, close games. He's won a Super Bowl before, so he knows how to win. So maybe he just caught lightning in a bottle, but you do got to have Deshaun Watson as your quarterback for right now.
All right, so Anthony and I said 8-9. Ben, what do you have for the Browns? Ben, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to go 9-8. I think that they're going to their defense is going to be able to keep them in games. I just think that the later on in the season, the quarterback play is going to get to them.
Nick?
Probably 9-8.
So we're not that far off from one another.
We're all
Really,
kind of like 500 or as close to 500 as you can get because there's not a number of games.
which would be
I
kind of a
don't know where they were
disappointment.
last year.
Honestly,
It would be a disappointment. 11-6 last year. I mean, but maybe last year was an anomaly. We don't know. All right, let's move on here to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is my dark horse team. I really think they're going to have an amazing year.
can you really call them a dark?
I was just about to say that. How are they a dark horse?
No. I mean, like a lot of people are not talking about them as much.
Yeah.
I haven't heard
No
it.
one else talking about teams in the league.
No, well, I haven't heard much about them. Like a lot of teams know they're going to be good, so they're not spending as much
Everybody
time
knows
on
the
them.
Ravens are going to be
It's
good.
between them and Kansas City, it seems like.
No, I mean, but I don't hear a lot about it. Like, I'm not hearing on all the national radio. I'm not hearing them. I'm hearing the Chiefs and Dolphins and all these teams. I'm not hearing anything about the
I
Ravens.
don't think anybody has the Dolphins ahead of the Ravens.
I'm not saying ahead of. They're
You're
talking
saying
more.
they're talked about.
Well, I
They're-
feel like they don't have to talk a lot about them if they kind of already know the expectations of how they're going to do so. That's another thing to keep in mind. Like the
So-
Chiefs specifically just get a lot of the overall media attention because they've been back-to-back champs. They got a chance to go for a three-peat for the first time ever. I understand specifically that they should talk more about this team. It's like, it's what it is.
I guess that's what I kind of felt like in Dark Horse. Like no one's talking about them. Like that's the frustrating part to me. Where this team is actually really good. I think Derrick Henry just pushed them up a notch even further. Like I know they were 13-4. I mean, I don't know, Nick. What's the number on the Ravens?
Right now, the number on the Ravens is.
I'm seeing 10.5. Does that match?
Did I miss it?
Oh my
There
God.
it is. 10.5. Yeah.
Really?
I think that's beatable. To be quite honest, I would
Definitely.
go.
I'd hammer
I would
the
go-
over on that.
I would take 11 wins. I think
I
they're going
would
to win
take
more
the
than
over.
11.
I mean, they went 13-4 last year. They look like a better team this year.
Yeah, and like I said, I think Derrick Henry allows them to be even better
I think
offensively.
he carries them a couple extra wins too, Derrick Henry.
He can catch some passes too, so he's not just a running back by
And I know a
trade.
lot of people talk about Derrick Henry being old, but he's not your normal 30-year-old running back. The guy's, a freak of nature. If you've seen his workouts, he stays in tremendous shape. The guy is huge. I think he's going to be great. And I'm just sitting there thinking, if you're a defense and a defensive coordinator, how are you going to stop a backfield with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry? And then you also have to worry about Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews catching the ball. And they have a good offensive line too. So that's good. And Baltimore always plays good defense. They're known as a defensive team. So, wow, man, they're very talented.
Yeah,
I think the most underrated thing about the Derrick Henry move too is he's going into the right system. Like he's essentially going into the place where it's all running. Like that's their main overall. And then you put one of the best running backs into a running system, you should expect results, especially with the way that he's been.
Yeah, this one's obvious. I think that
in Tennessee, Derrick Henry was the system.
right, but I just think the offensive line is going to hold up Derrick
and you just
Henry
got a lot of other
more.
pieces
And
around.
they'll probably run a lot of option plays.
And it'll leave the backfield open more for Derrick Henry to run through the center because of having a better offensive line. I see him having an incredible year statistically.
But I also think there'll be he'll probably get fewer carries. Like there won't be as much pressure on him.
Right, but I think he's going to get more yards on what he catches or what he runs for. I just think it's going to be more significant.
To be more efficient.
More efficient. And so I think the Ravens are a division winner. This is not even a question for me.
Yeah, I think we all agree. I'm sure we all agree on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. They're definitely a division winner. They definitely, we got to talk about. They definitely lost some key pieces on defense. Like we said, Baltimore always plays great defense, but at the end of the day, Patrick Queen was a great inside linebacker, and Geno Stone was a great safety. And there are going to be a little, not super, kind of thin at pass rusher. They're not overly deep at that, so they may not have a great pass rush, but Baltimore always seems to find guys. They still have Raquan Smith. They got Marlon Humphreys. They got Kyle Hamilton. They got that great defensive tackle, Justin Amabuke. So they definitely got some key pieces, and Baltimore always plays great defense. Maybe not as great because they were in that conversation for the best defensive football. Maybe not that great, but they'll still probably be hovering a top 10 defense, and they're going to have a great offense. So I think they're going to win the division, and they're going to be right there competing for the number one seed in the AFC.
Now, I'll throw this out, even though we're going to do it in part 3 of this, because I just think it's obvious. Lamar for MVP, question mark?
No.
No?
I mean, I don't see why not.
The media tends not to give it to the same guy like that multiple times. You really have to do something really, really like outstanding to win the MVP, especially since he's already won it twice. It's going to be hard for him to get a third MVP. He's going to have to be so much by far the best player in the league, and they're going to have to be the number 1 seed easily.
Okay.
I think he's a candidate, but I agree with Anthony in terms of he's already won it multiple times. And I think that sometimes when you're in a right overall team and system, sometimes it get overlooked kind of based on what you're kind of surrounded by. They sometimes maybe will give it to possibly a team that, the underdog type of story. Like look at like CJ Stroud, when he just kind of came in, he didn't really have a ton of stuff around him, but he could have had potential MVP type of, votes given kind of the way that he kind of performed him. So.
And that's a great point. Like we seen with Patrick Mahomes when he lost Tyreek Hill, he won the MVP because they know there was more on his plate.
Right.
Not saying I think Josh Allen's going to win the MVP, but if Josh Allen and the Bills are, to be a 12-win team and they have a great season without Stephon Diggs, that's the type of storyline that could possibly get an MVP. I think Lamar Jackson, he's already been the number 1 seed before. He's already won multiple MVPs. It's going to be really hard for him to get a third one.
He needs the Super Bowl. That's the thing that he's ready for.
I mean, so in theory, you're saying that even if he had an amazing, like lights out season, that wouldn't go towards a factor of the MVP?
No. If he does, I think he will win MVP.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that with voting before, where sometimes people say, well, all right, he's won already. I don't want to give it to him again, which I have a whole theory on. I think how ridiculous that can be from some to time. Oh, well, he won already. Let's give it to some. Yeah, that's a whole nother issue, but we can talk about that another day. All right, let's move on. Let's make our predictions first. I mean, we all know who we're taking at number 1, obviously, with the Ravens. So after the Ravens, where is everybody else standing? Ben, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to go Ravens 1. I know the Bengals situation is really, really tough right now with Burrow, and I really hate the overall situation here because I think things would change if he goes down. But if I had to pick a name out of the hat in terms of these 3 teams, I'm going to go Cincinnati 2. I'm going to go Browns 3, and then I'm going to go Steelers 4. I think the Browns quarterback situation takes them away from that 2 spot. I think that Burrow, if he stays healthy, is right up there with Lamar, but I think that the Ravens just as a team overall is just a better team than Cincinnati's team. And then the Steelers just have a ton of question marks that I just cannot put them over those 3 teams.
Nick, go ahead.
All right. Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers.
Okay. Anthony?
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I think the Ravens win the division. Bengals are going to be second. I think the Bengals will clinch a wild card spot. I'm going to go Browns third. I think they're going to just miss the wild card spot by a game or 2. And then I think Pittsburgh finishes 4th and misses the playoffs.
Okay, so obviously, like everybody else, I think the Ravens are going to run away. I think they might get the 1 seed, depending on if they play really well all year. And here's where I had the struggles between the Bengals and the Browns, because I think they're both going to be under 500, I think, possibly. So I don't like Deshaun Watson.
Really quickly, Nick, wasn't there a division last year that kind of had that similar feel of like the second, number 2 was like under 500?
Yes.
It kind of maybe has that.
I think it was the South. I think they're always under 500, that division, all the time. I've been on record a ton that I hate Deshaun Watson for everything that he's done off the field, and I hope that he fails in Cleveland because I just don't like what he stands for character-wise and a human being. I know I'm thinking a little bit more with my heart, as they say in the business, more than what he's going to do on the field. But in my opinion, I think the Bengals situation is going to become a mess at some point this year. I think the synergy in the locker room is not good. There's been reports all offseason that the locker room chemistry has not been great. So I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm taking the Browns to finish second behind the Ravens. I'm taking the Bengals third, and obviously the Steelers, who have
I'm not surprised you said that. You're like the biggest Bengals hater.
It's not that I'm a hater. I don't actually hate the Bengals. I think it's just the situation that they're in.
No, I get it. I get it.
So that's where I lie. Trust me, I'm going to get a ton of flack like I did during the preview last year. All right, moving on to the AFC South. the Titans, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Texans. All right, here we go. The Titans, who we were just talking about, Derrick Henry going from the Titans to the Ravens. This is an interesting team. A lot of departures off this team. Some interesting additions. I don't see this team really improving. I think 6-11 is really where they possibly could end up or less, to be quite honest. Their quarterback situation is a question mark, really. Didn't they just trade one of their quarterbacks to Green Bay?
To the Packers today.
So
he wasn't really playing anyway.
But I'm not expecting much from this team whatsoever. So
wait, Nick Folk is still in the league?
Yes,
yep.
He's still in the league. Yep.
He was a Patriot a couple years ago. They brought him to Tennessee, and he's still there.
Yeah, well, we had nightmares of him as a Jet. So
I'm surprised he's still in the I'm actually shocked.
Well, kickers last way longer than anybody in this game.
What is he, like 50 years old?
Something like he's got to be in his 40s. But yeah, I'm not expecting much from this team. There's not really much I can add to this.
He's 39, actually.
Oh,
way younger than I thought he was. I thought he was so much older.
Believe it or not, that's not old for a kicker. Actually,
it's not. I thought he was so much older.
But since there's not really much for me to add to this team because I think they're going to stink like really bad this year. I think they're going to be worse than their record from last year. I don't know how bad it's going to be, but I could see them finishing at the bottom of their division. Ben, what do you think?
I think that the record right there is pretty much how I feel about them this year. I do think that as much as Derrick Henry losing him is pretty much kind of their offense as a whole. Tony Pollard, for the most part with Dallas, looked really good the last couple of years with them. So I do think that they kind of bring in a younger type of guy at running back, but they definitely can kind of give production over there. Calvin Ridley, I know that obviously I just don't know if he can stay on the field with them the whole entire season. But if he does, I think he can give him a dynamic overall at the receiver room. But outside of that, they don't really have a ton there. Will Levis is still extremely young. I wouldn't say I'm high on him, but I'm also not kind of low on him. I'm kind of in like the middle.
I think he was overdrafted.
Yeah. I mean, outside of that, I mean, the offensive line, I don't really know a ton about. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's awful. It kind of just gives me that Pittsburgh vibes, but kind of like a lower level almost, where it's just a ton of unknown. And like Mike Vrabel in terms of like his situation long-term with them too. I think that could be somebody that, I mean, I love Vrabel a lot, of course, with his New England days, but I don't know if he's their long-term guy long-term. So I have them probably around like 5-12. I mean, they're kind of right, either slightly under this or slightly over.
Well, he's not with them anymore.
Is it Callahan?
Yeah, Callahan. I think it's Callahan because Vrabel is actually in the Browns organization.
He's with the Browns now. Okay. I mean, that's really how much I've been really keeping an eye with this time.
Well, I don't blame you, though. The team has been awful for a long period of time.
But regardless of who they have, Vrabel or Callahan, I mean, Callahan, I think is he more the younger side too? Or is he more
no, I think he's a rookie head coach, I think.
Yeah, so isn't it a ton of head coaching experience either? I'm going to probably go with them around 5-12.
Yeah. Okay. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, this is going to come down to one thing: is Will Levis the quarterback of the future? I don't think they're obviously, they're not. They know they're not going to compete, but they got to see, is Will Levis really the guy? That's why you see that they've, put so many assets and players around them. He's going to have two good running backs in Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. You got DeAndre Hopkins, and now you got Calvin Ridley. You brought in Tyler Boyd as well. So, if your quarterback can't concede with those guys, around them, there's definitely some question marks. Their offensive line, though, is definitely rebuilding. They definitely have to protect Will Levis the best that they can. But, yeah, I definitely think this is probably a last-place finish team in their division. They're probably going to be, competing for maybe one of the top picks in the draft. They got a young, offensive mind coach who's really going to try to get the most out of Will Levis. And if he can and Will Levis doesn't show any growth, I wouldn't be surprised if they're picking the top of the draft and draft another quarterback. And honestly, I think, they're probably going to be a 5-win team, I think.
Okay. Nick?
I mean, this team is very clearly at the bottom of the division. They're the only one without, like, all the other teams are sort of similar with, like, young quarterback situations where that may or may not have been proven between like Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Trevor Lawrence. And all of those teams are sort of similar, but this team is just clearly way below it. I mean, the quarterback puts mayonnaise in his coffee.
Ugh, don't remind me of that, please. Ugh.
You knew I was going to bring it up. And
I mean, you might be playing like it too this year.
Especially now that they lost Derrick Henry. I mean, I don't see how this team can even come close to 500.
By the way, I think Levis actually has a deal with a Mayo company now, if I'm not mistaken. Ugh. Why? Just because he's a meme from the draft?
No, I thought ketchup on steak. I mean, when I'd say ketchup on steak is gross, but Patrick Mahomes does that typically. I mean, that's at least more of like, okay, you can get it. Like Will Levis's does is just.
Well, isn't it true that the Hunt family owns the Chiefs? So that kind of makes sense, I guess. But I don't know. Oh, so he signed a lifetime deal with Hellman's Mayonnaise. Lifetime deal, whatever that means. I love when they put lifetime in the fine print. Oh, he signed a lifetime deal. What?
He might make more money off of putting mayonnaise in his coffee than actually playing football.
I'm still reading this.
Joking. That might be true.
Well, who was the college basketball player from the past tournament who I forgot the name of the team? It was one of the lower level teams. Like he was doing commercials for Buffalo Wild Wings, and he went viral during the tournament.
Oh, it was the guy from, I think, Oakland, I think it was.
Yeah, that guy. That guy went viral, and then people forgot about him.
But he made a lot of money off that virality.
I forgot why he went viral.
You're talking about the kid that had that breakout game against Kentucky?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
But I just find it funny. I'm still reading the headline here. Went viral for revealing he put condiment into his coffee instead of creamer or sugar. Ugh. Just quickly, the number for the Titans, which I'm trying to find here, 5.5. Does anyone believe they can win 6 games?
Yeah.
I think they could. I just don't think they will.
I'm going to go under. I think they're going to win 5.
I think it's going to be a bad season. I think it's 5 or lower, to be quite honest. All right. Moving on to the Colts. Now, obviously, a quarterback situation. They brought in Joe Flacco because Joe Flacco continues to get life in this league.
We thought he was done when he was on the Jets.
Yeah, well, because he was awful. Like every time we bring somebody in, they stink in New York. That's like the whole New York jinx.
But then he was good with the Browns.
Yeah, he was comeback player of the year. I mean, obviously Gardner Minshew out. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, is he healthy? I don't know. This is an interesting one. Nick, what do you think about this team?
I think that they're just a really big wild card right now because we don't know what we're going to get. We don't even know what this quarterback situation is going to be. But we don't really know how good Anthony Richardson is yet. And also, we don't know if he's going to be healthy. And we don't know which Joe Flacco we're going to get. We get the Browns Joe Flacco or the Jets Joe Flacco.
It's a good point.
I mean, for many years, I've always liked Joe Flacco. I always thought he was a bit underrated. But I guess they had to go get Joe Flacco, similar to how the Jets had to go get Tyrod Taylor.
Backups seem to survive in this league a lot longer than some starters.
Overall, I would put them third. Behind the Jaguars and the Texans. Like their quarterback situations are much better right now. This year, there's a good chance they're going to have to start Flacco. And we know a lot less about Anthony Richardson than we do about Stroud or Lawrence.
It's a good point. I mean, I don't know what to say about this team at this point. I mean, if Richardson's healthy, maybe they compete. I don't know. But Anthony, your thought on the Colts?
I think there's a lot of boom or bust with this team. You can see that there's a lot of betting sharks out there who are putting their money on this team to win the division. Now, I definitely don't agree with that. But there's definitely some guys out there who are saying that the Colts are going to be a competitive team, but it's ultimately going to come down to Anthony Richardson's development. Now, he did look pretty good running the ball when he was in there, but he's definitely got to develop as a passer. But when you talk about a guy who has all the tools and is super talented, I mean, the guy is over 6'4", like 240 pounds. He runs like a 4'5", 4'6", 40, and he's got a cannon of an arm. So if the guy could put it all together, this team could be scary. You got Jonathan Taylor. I like their receivers. They got some young, good receivers in Pittman Jr., Downs. They brought in Adonai Mitchell, who I like. So this team definitely has some things that could be interesting. It's going to be a team that I think is going to be fun to watch. But I honestly feel like they're kind of like a year away from really, competing and making a real shot for the playoffs. I think Anthony Richardson's going to take some time. He's going to really have a legitimate rookie season because he really didn't have a rookie season last year. And he was already the youngest quarterback in football last year. And the guy didn't get a super lot of starts in college either. So he definitely needs a lot of development and a lot of time. The Colts lost their number one pass rusher in Samson and Buckham, this year. So that's going to be a tough loss. So their defense, even though they do have DeForest Buckner, who I like, and Franklin, the linebacker, I'm not super sold on a lot of their pieces, and I feel like they're a year away right now.
I mean, so I just looked up the gambling odds because you were saying that the gambling sharks were looking at them being a division winner. It's plus 310 on the Colts right now to win the division. Nick, you would know if that's a better on the pricing of that, if that's even worth.
You said it's plus 310 to win the division?
Yeah.
What are the other? Where is that in the order?
I have to see if I can find it. Here it is. So the Jaguars are plus 270. The Texans are plus 105. I mean, I don't know why they're giving me those. Oh, wait a minute. Colts 310. I just see the Colts right now. They gave it 310. I don't know if you have if you look that up or find it. Well, you're looking that up.
I'm looking at the futures.
Yeah. Just looking at this team, there's not much really to be excited about in my book, at least not this year. I would say that give them time, give them a year or two. I think they will be a competitive team down the line. If Anthony Richardson can stay healthy and not get hurt, I think this team could be a better team. Now, I look at the over-under, if I can find it here. This
According to DraftKings, it's plus 340.
Oh, wow. So it's even higher.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised by this at all, that they're third high. The odds are third for them.
I don't know. Is that even worth taking a flyer? I doubt it.
Well, the thing is, I think the Colts this year are like they're win the division or bust, because it's easier for them to win the division than it is for them to actually make a wild card.
I was going to give this overall comparison. If you guys want to, call me crazy or not, they remind me of last year's Cleveland Browns, kind of to a degree in a way, where you have a young quarterback, actually with Joe Flacco coming in, where he has some injury concerns, as we can kind of see. And if Flacco could come in, he has a plethora of weapons, kind of like the Browns did, where they had Elijah Moore, they had Cooper. I mean, Pittman Jr. is I want to say he's kind of on Cooper's level in a way. I mean, I don't know if Pittman can be a one, but I think he's on wide receiver 2 on a lot of really good teams. And then you have, you have an offensive line that's decent. It's here and there, but there's just a ton of question marks. And when you're playing 2 really good teams ahead of them, yeah, you can compete, but I just don't think it's going to be enough.
All right, let's move on here. Let's see. The Jaguars. Okay, so again, a lot of news. Quarterback-wise, large contract. I mean, that's the only news I can really think of off the top of my head that really happened to them this offseason. Was there any other thing news-wise that happened with them, or no?
Well, other than Trevor Lawrence's big contract, I would say no.
So I think he was overpaid, by the way.
Maybe Gabe Davis.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, so this is where he ended up.
In Mac Jones, but...
Does anyone care about Mac Jones anymore?
We will if he has to play.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point, but...
You never know.
But we all think Trevor Lawrence got overpaid, right?
No.
I don't think he got overpaid.
No. I mean, that's just what quarterbacks are worth now.
It's the market.
I just think it's insane. He hasn't proven anything yet.
It sounds like a lot, but that's true with all these guys. Are they all getting overpaid?
Well, right, but I'm just saying he hasn't earned anything.
Neither of the guys who you don't really have to earn anything in terms of like championships in order to get paid a lot of money.
At least not in today's world.
No,
anymore.
Not for quarterbacks.
I mean,
so I don't know.
I don't know much about this team. Like, what was it, a couple of years ago where they had a 10-plus win season?
They had a great comeback 2 years ago in the playoffs against Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Now, I know that had a lot to do with Brandon Staley. That's why he's no longer there anymore. But I do think Trevor Lawrence, he needs to fix those interceptions. He has a lot of blunders as well, and it's not like he's like Josh Allen. It's not like they're putting the whole team on his shoulders. He's got some good pieces around him now. I think Travis Etienne's a solid running back. They do still have Christian Kirk. I really like the rookie Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. He's got all the talent in the world, and in training camp and preseason, he's had a lot of explosive moments and some wow moments. So I'm really excited to see him. I do think they're probably the second best team. I do think they're probably a tier below the Houston Texans, but I definitely think they're going to compete again to be one of those last wildcard teams. I do think they'll probably just miss it, but they might have the same record again, I think, as a 9-win team.
Who's left? Ben, go ahead. What do you think about this team?
They're interesting. I do think that with Trevor Lawrence, it all comes down to his health. I mean, he's had some health issues here and there. Stay on the field. But I do really like Brian Thomas Jr. I really, really like that draft pick that they got. Kind of an underrated overall fit there. Of course, Calvin Ridley moving on kind of sucks for them, but I really like what the Jaguars have. Etienne at the running game. Defensively, if Eric Armstead could actually give him something, I think that could be a really overall good acquisition there. And then, if Trevor could stay on the field, I mean, Doug Peterson has been one of the best overall play callers that we obviously have seen, for most of the time. I really like Peterson's overall, coaching game. So I really think there's a lot there. To me, actually, this is my dark horse is the Jaguars. I just really like what they have. I don't think that they're better than the Texans, but I also don't think that this is a team you can take lightly either, because they had a great start last year and they just fell off the earth in that second half. I mean, they legitimately, everybody was just like, all right, they're about to clinch this week. They're about to clinch this week. And then the last week happened against the Titans out of all teams, where you felt, all right, this is going to be fine. He's going to do it. And he fell apart. So I just think personally, if they can really lock themselves in, if Lawrence could have a really good year with that running game that they have and some of their pass guys like Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis and some other guys, this team could definitely be a really fun team. They can give a lot of teams some trouble.
Yeah, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, Trevor Lawrence needs to play better. That's just an overall thing. I don't think that's master of the obvious right there. But he's got to have a better season if they really want to compete and make a playoff run. I just think he's got to play better. And again, like Anthony said, he's got to fix the interceptions number. That's just a huge problem that he's got to fix. I'm looking at the number. I think it was, what was the number? 7.5. So what do we think about 7.5? So
7.5 wins is the over under?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm going over.
It sounded kind of low to me.
That sounds really low.
I'm actually going the 9, 8, 10 ones with this team.
I mean, I don't know if I would go 9, 10 wins. I think they could definitely win 8 for sure. That's not a question. Are we all hammering the over on that one? I think I would. All right.
But I think that this team, I think that it's going to be easier for them to win the division than to actually get a wild card.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that with all the teams, all the other divisions. All right. The Houston Texans. Now, again, interesting team, 10-7. CJ Stroud, obviously big young if I can speak, young up and coming star. Obviously they added Stephon Diggs. That was a shocker of the offseason for me, by the way, that he went from the Bills to the Texans. But I think the Texans are actually on a good roll, and I think they're becoming a better team over the next season or two. They could be making a run for many years the way this is going.
Yeah, I think they could, but I think they also have a lot of pressure on them. Their expectations this year are very high. They had very low expectations last year. The idea of them even winning 8 or 9 games would have felt unfathomable at this time last year. Yet they went 10-7 and won a playoff game. So I think that the expectation, I think they might be due for a letdown.
Really?
I think that, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Anthony, what do you think about the Texans?
I absolutely love the Texans. I actually been a big fan of CJ Stroud since he's been in high school. I remember when he won the Elite 11 back when he was entering his senior year of high school. And I remember when he went to Ohio State, and I was telling my Ohio State fans, as much as you love Justin Fields, wait until you see C.J. Stroud. And I knew when he came in the NFL, he's so smart. He goes through his progression so well. He can read defenses, and he's so mature for a young quarterback. He's so accurate. He always puts the ball exactly where the receiver needs it. He puts the ball where the receivers could get a lot of run after the catches as well. So I love C.J. Stroud. And, bringing in Stephon Diggs, I would make the argument that maybe the Houston Texans have the best receiving group in the National Football League. I think Nico Collins has established himself as a true number one receiver. Diggs is still probably a number one receiver, even though he's not prime Stephon Diggs. We've seen Tank Dell, how great he was before his injury, and Noah Brown is still solid as well. And don't forget Dalton Schultz. He's a good tight end, and you brought in Joe Mixon. So, this offense is going to be practically unstoppable. I know, teams are going to be able to game plan. They're going to have some game tape on C.J. Stroud, but C.J. Stroud will also be better. The team around him will be better. They brought in some good defensive players like Donnell Hunter to go alongside Will Anderson Jr. I love their young cornerback group. I think Derek Stingley Jr. is due for a breakout year. So I love the Texans. I'm gonna go as them as probably 11 to 12 win team.
The scary part is the number, at least the one I'm reading here, is Texans 8.5. That's kind of nuts.
I think that sounds about right. 8.5.
You think so?
That's 500. You don't think an over-under being
No,
500?
I think they're going to go above it.
I think they'll go above it. I don't think it sounds that crazy because I don't think they're that good. I think they had a good year last year. But look, C.J. Stroud is a good quarterback. He also could be due for a bit of a sophomore slump. And I think this team is slightly above average. But I think that sounds about right as an over-under.
So you think they're going to win 9 games?
I think they'll win 9 games.
Okay. So are we all over on that one or no?
So for me, I like Anthony. I like this team. They give me the AFC version of the Detroit Lions, a team that's really, really young, a really young coach that's essentially building from ground up. And now essentially, since you have the quarterback of the long term, you have the pieces around. And they finally got Stephon Diggs. And obviously people have been calling him a diva, this and that. But I actually kind of like the fit over in Houston. There's not a ton of pressure. Obviously a lot of pressure for the team. But you kind of see with the other guys around him, he's not the same Diggs he once was. You got Nico Collins, you got Tank Dell. And Joe Mixon, guys, I think that the running game was a massive thing that they missed last year. They didn't have that main guy at running back. Mixon's going to come in and give him a lot specifically. The tight ends is even really underrated in Dalton Schultz. So, they got a ton of things there. I will agree with Nick that the pressure is on this team. But I also think that they give me 11-6 type of vibes where I think that they're going to be essentially a very solid team. They're not going to be at the Ravens-Chiefs level just yet, but I also think that we can kind of understand that this is going to be a team in the next 3-4 years that wouldn't shock me that they could be in a Super Bowl. It would not shock me at all. So, that's one thing. I also think that Danielle Hunter is a really good move for them defensively. They're starting to get some pieces on that pass rush. So, yeah, I like this team a lot. And it all just comes down to, can they elevate themselves to the next level?
And Ben, one last thing I'll say to you on that. You were mentioning how they're going to probably win a Super Bowl in a couple years to compete. I think their window's right now. When you got a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, your window's right now before you have to pay C.J. Stroud. So I think right now in the next 2-3 years is their best window.
That's a good point.
That's the thing. Patrick Mahomes, right now I just can't bet against this guy at this point in time. But if there's a quarterback that could be in terms of Mahomes' way, outside of Burrow and some other guys, CJ could be up there. I just don't know specifically if he's just at that level yet.
I just don't know if they have enough to really compete. So we'll see what happens. I like them as a 10-win team. They went 10-7 last year. I could really see them going 10-7 again this coming season. All right, moving on. Prediction time. Anthony, what do you think about this division overall, 1 through 4?
I'm going to go Houston first as an 11-win team. I think Jacksonville will be second as a 9-win team. I'm going to go Indy third as probably an 8-win team. And I think the Titans will be at the bottom fourth. Fourth place probably as a 5-win team.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same track with you. Houston first. I think they're going to run away for the most part. I think the Jaguars will make it competitive, but I just think Houston is too much. The Colts, they're just better than the Titans. That's why they're in third over the Titans. We're just a bad team. So I'm in agreement there. Nick?
I would say Jacksonville first, then Houston, then the Colts, then the Titans.
That's okay.
Nick? Ben, sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm tired. It's okay.
I guess when you have a lot of Knicks, even though we only have 2 in the group, I
Yes.
understand. I'm gonna go Houston, but I'm gonna go I'm not gonna have them be like a runaway either. It's kind of like the AFC North, where I think you have the top 2 heavy teams, but it's not gonna be a runaway. Jacksonville, I think, is gonna be having a much better year compared to last year. I think if Lawrence could stay healthy, they don't have that kind of slump. Because I think Lawrence's last year was a sophomore year, right? I'm pretty sure, in terms of him being their guy, specifically at quarterback. Maybe I'm wrong, but regardless, I know that second half they just really took a turn, and he had a lot of injuries and he turned the ball over a lot. But I think he has a better year this year. I got them at 2. The Colts, they're just kind of there, like we were talking about. Anthony Richardson, is he going to be able to stay on the field? And then you just got the Titans, who were just kind of there. That's pretty much it.
All right. Moving on here. AFC West, Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders. I mean, I think for the most part, we know where we're going with this division winner for the most part. But, all right. A team that everyone is kind of been buzzing about, the Chargers. Obviously, new head coach. Obviously, some issues at the quarterback position with some injuries. A lot of movement, a lot of additions, a lot of subtractions. Anthony, what do you think about the Chargers?
I do think they'll be improved. I'm not sure if Harbaugh's going to get him to the playoffs year 1, but we've seen Jim Harbaugh. I mean, overnight, wherever he goes, he usually turns that team upside down first year. He always makes them really, really competitive. He always, has a great defense, great offensive, defensive lines, and a great running game. I know he's going to have to put a lot of stock in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins, has to stay healthy, but he's definitely talented. Let's see if he can stay healthy. They definitely need some more receivers, even though, like I said, Jim Harbaugh doesn't necessarily have to have a true number 1 receiver on his team. But, when you're relying on guys like Palmer, Chark, and Ladd McConkey, they're definitely going to need a true number 1 eventually. Obviously, I think they got talented on their defense. You still got Darwin James, still got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. So they definitely got some talent. They're definitely going to compete. I see them being probably a 9-win team, improving their record by 4 wins, and really building on, what could be a foundation for next year. And that starts, like I said, with the offensive line with Joe Alt.
Ben?
This is an interesting team because I do feel like they lost a lot at their catching situation. And Justin Herbert, his health. That's another guy at quarterback. I know that he obviously is coming in kind of banged up. Joe Alt, I think, is a really good offensive lineman, but we see when guys come in specifically as drafters, it doesn't really kind of carry for the actual season to be a long-term success. I mean, it might be for the future. I also don't know about how Harbaugh is going to translate over from college to the pros, even though it's a name, and it's a name that we have seen.
Well, remember, he coached in the NFL too.
We've seen him coach the pros.
Right. But it's all about in terms of can he get back to that specific overall thing with the team that has a ton of unknowns right now currently. With Dobbins and Edwards, I like that running back duo. Hayden Hurst, I think, has shown flashes that he could be a decent tight end. I don't know. I'm not saying that their 5 wins bad because I know that they last year go through a ton of quarterbacks when Herbert went down, so they kind of were at that second half.
Didn't they have a no-name quarterback for 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that with this overall division, I think that they could, because I look at the Broncos and I look at the Raiders, I think that the Chargers honestly are my second team. I think that the Chiefs really are the runaway, but I also think the Chargers are probably 8 wins. I think that's kind of fair. 8 wins, no more than that though. I think that 8 wins is probably their ceiling overall. Allen and Williams, I just don't know with Palmer. Yes, he's a wide receiver 3. McConkey, I think, is decent, but he's a rookie. So you're just putting a lot in terms of the pass catchers. If they're going too much run heavy, I just don't know specifically how that's going to work out. Their defense is decent. And when you have the Chiefs in your way, it's really just hard to kind of go above that right now. So
it's a race for second.
It's a race, exactly. I don't think that'll be a playoff team, but I also don't think they're going to be an awful team. You guys kind of understand. They'll be kind of like kind of above the Titans and Patriots, but they're going to be kind of in that like mid-tier in the draft. Kind of, I guess, like the Browns, I guess, in terms of how I had them.
Nick?
Well, I don't agree with this at all. I think that they will be a good team. They were a bad team last year. They went 5-12. It's worth noting, first of all, that Justin Herbert got hurt. So,
yeah,
when you don't have your quarterback, that's going to make the situation a lot worse. I also think they were the best 5-12 team we've ever seen. It involved a lot of I'm not joking. They really were. Like, they lost a lot of really close games to really good teams.
True.
And even though they were losing these games, they really weren't that much worse than the teams that they were losing to. So I didn't really think I don't think they're that bad. And, you have to look at how they've been with Justin Herbert, and they've been a pretty good team. And that was with Brandon Staley as their head coach. Brandon Staley is like the level below Nathaniel Hackett.
He's on the unemployment line and will stay there forever.
Right, when it comes to his reputation as a head coach. Not to mention the fact he was a defensive-minded head coach. Jim Harbaugh, he can actually coach an offense, which makes it drastically different. I mean, coaching, he's one of the few head coaches who's had success in college and the NFL. So I think I really do like the Chargers this year. The only downside for them is that they're in a tough conference. They're in a division with the Chiefs, and they're in the tougher of the two conferences. That's the only thing. But I think I'd see tremendous improvement.
All right.
Not that it would take much from what they were last year.
So actually, I'm going to go to the complete opposite of you, Nick. I think this team is going to tank and sink. I just don't like the way this team is situated. I'm not a Herbert fan, really, at all. I don't like his game. I don't think it translates inside the Charger system. I think he wants to throw the ball. They're not really a throw team. They are a running style team. And I think that is a problem, number one. Also, they got rid of like 70% of their core in departures. Like, they got rid of Eckler, who I understand was hurt.
That's another one, too.
They got rid of Eckler. They got rid of Keenan Allen, who I think now is with the Bears, right?
Yeah, he's lost his
Mike Williams with the Jets.
And Mike Williams with the Jets. They got rid of Everett. They got rid of Kendricks. They got rid of a lot of guys that were a core part of this system for many years. So now there's a lot of unknown going on in this organization. By the way, Harbaugh is dealing with all that nonsense that happened, obviously, with Michigan. And so he has all that drama to deal with. So there's a lot of pressure on him to perform because everyone is calling him a cheater for all the allegations going on. So I chalk this up to be a bad season in a lot of ways. I think it's a reset year. Believe it or not, their record from last year, I think, is accurate. I think they could be 5-12 again. And I think, yeah.
No way they go 5-12.
I think they're going to be a bad team again.
Unless there's another injury or something like that. Something like that, maybe then. But
I wouldn't go that far.
Not if they stay healthy.
Well, do you trust Justin Herbert to be healthy?
I don't know. I don't know if he will. I could see him staying healthier than he was last year.
I hope so. Again, it's another I hope so case like Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert.
Nick, you think about it, though. You look at the Broncos quarterback situation, you look at the Raiders. Like, you got to at least feel with the Chargers' overall team that's better.
Yeah, I agree, Ben and Nick. Wouldn't you say, too? I mean, you guys are probably all agree. We're talking about all these divisions in the AFC. This has got to be the worst one of the four, right? This has got to be the worst division of the four. You got two teams that are going to finish at the bottom. No. So you don't think this is the worst division in the AFC?
Of the four, you think this is the weakest one?
The weakest division in the AFC? I think so.
I think so.
You got two good teams and two bottom teams.
Who's weaker, Nick?
The South. This team has the Chiefs.
Well, we're talking about overall, not just one team.
Yeah.
Right, but that's a pretty big part of it. I mean, you can't say it's a weak division when you have no shot of actually winning it. Can you really say it's a weak division?
I mean, if you only have one strong team.
I mean, okay, realistically speaking, this division is stronger than the South, because in the South, at least you can win it. The Chargers would very likely win the AFC South. They have no shot of winning the AFC.
I don't know about that. I don't know if they'd be able to beat Houston this year.
They're much more likely to win the AFC South than they are to win the AFC West. We all agree there's virtually no chance of winning the AFC West.
I'm with Anthony. I don't know if people could beat the Texans. I think the Texans are stiff competition, really.
But they're nothing compared to the Chiefs. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're nothing compared to
But
the
then if
Chiefs.
that's the case, the Chiefs are the best team in the league. So by your analogy, then the AFC West is the best division in football then.
No, I'm not saying they're the best division in football. I'm saying it's kind of hard for them to be the weakest division in football when in the AFC if they have the best team.
Well,
that's what I'm.
Let me say it from a different approach. I think what he's basically saying is the Chiefs are the runaway. So
Right.
it's such an obvious win that everybody else is weaker inside the division. I think is what you're saying, Anthony, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say if you look at the division as a whole, obviously the Chiefs are the best team. So if you want to go up by that, the hardest division to win is probably their division because you do got the Chiefs. But the second and third best team and the fourth best team, that division is a lot weaker than the other teams we talked about. All these divisions we talk about, we're talking about 2 or 3 teams possibly making the playoffs. We're not talking about 3 teams making the playoffs in this division whatsoever.
Every single one of these divisions has at least one really bad team, though. Every single one of them.
Well, that's by calculation of or process of elimination. That's obviously true.
I would say, I mean, like this team has this division has 2 bad teams. I would say so does the AFC North. So does I would say the NFC, the East and the South have 1 bad team. That's how I would put it.
I get it. I mean, long story short, I think they could possibly win 5 games again this coming season. You have question marks about Herbert. You have question marks about your team as a whole. I don't know. Like, I understand Jim Harbaugh was great last time around with the Niners. Obviously, it was a different league back then when he was a head coach. Much different rules, much different situation. So, I don't know. I don't see them winning very much. All right. Moving on to the Broncos. Broncos country, let's ride. Not really. I don't know. Is there much we can really say about this team?
I don't know.
I'm going to
There's only
limb,
3
guys.
additions.
I think this is the worst team in the AFC. And I know that the Patriots and the Titans are going to be up there as the worst, but I think that they have the worst quarterback room out there. I mean, Bo Nix, okay, like you have potentially a guy. They moved on from Jerry Jeudy, Justin Simmons, Josie Jewell, Lloyd Cushenberry. I mean, they lost some pieces. I mean, Russ, I mean, I really wasn't surprised about he was going to be moved on. But there's just nothing there. I mean, Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham, it's just a very unknown quarterback room that's really, really young. They got to go against the Chiefs twice. I know that the Raiders, they can maybe split, but I don't know. I think 4 wins. I'm going to go 4 wins with this Denver team.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think this is a rebuild as well. Kind of similar to maybe like what's going on with the New England Patriots. They got to see what they got in their quarterback and Bo Nix. But I do think Bo Nix, with all the college experience he has, and we see in the preseason, he does look pro ready. I think he definitely fits Sean Payton's system pretty well. So I think with having him, they're going to show a lot more growth. And I think Bo Nix in the offense will play better than a lot of people will give them credit for. But yeah, this team is not, super talented. I know they got Pat Surtain on defense at corner, who's really good. But pretty much after that, it's a bunch of no names and a lot of guys that, need to develop. So I definitely think it's a rebuild year as well. They're going to probably be competing with, the Raiders and the Patriots for the number 1 pick in the draft. I think because of the quarterback situation in Sean Payton, I might give them the edge over the Raiders. But the Raiders have a great defense, I think, and that's going to be really close. So I think the Broncos might finish 3rd in the division. But yeah, they're probably going to be probably a 5-win team, I think.
Well, the way I look at this team, it's going to be a joke all year. We're just going to make fun of the Broncos all year. You'll see it during our football forecast show. Nick remembers it last year, how many jokes we made on Broncos country. Let's ride. And Ben, you too, you saw it. I mean, like it's going to be a joke fest on the Broncos all year. I looked at their schedule. I really, in theory, could only find 2 wins on their entire schedule. And those are the Saints and the Panthers. Those are the only 2 victories I really could find. Everything else, I think they could lose. I think we could be in the seeings of a 2-15 team, possibly.
You know what, though? You never know. These teams always pull off some type of victory.
You're right, but I'm just saying if we're looking at it on paper, schedule-wise, and they say obviously you can't go by on paper, but we're doing predictions. I think that's the only 2 games in theory they could win without any luck going their way.
Nick, you don't think they could split with the Raiders?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
I don't know. I think the Raiders, like you said, defensively, I think are a much better team. I think they could win those 2 games on defense alone against the Broncos. Could
they
they?
always seem
Could
to
they?
split though, regardless of how they are too. Though that's the thing.
Could they theoretically split games? Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't see why they couldn't. But I just think defensively, I think every team will beat the Broncos on defense alone because their quarterback room, like you said, Ben, is an
And by
absolute
the way,
mess.
we were making jokes all last year, but like about the Broncos, but they really weren't all that bad last year. They actually had a stretch where they were actually very good.
Well, they lost a lot of close games too.
Yeah.
That was the other issue.
So they really weren't all. They didn't have such a bad year.
And
It wasn't
Russ
like
did
you-
have times that he was decent too.
I guess we'll see what happens.
And Bo Nix fit Sean Payton's offense perfectly because what he hated about Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson would ab-lit a lot and not throw to the open man. Bo Nix was going to just throw to the open man and do exactly what Sean Payton's going to want him to do. I really think Bo Nix in the offense is going to be better than what people are giving him credit for.
I mean, I think there's going to be some growing pains along the way for sure. Will he be a good quarterback?
Like I said, this is a growing pain.
I get it, but
That's
I'm
why
just
they're the
saying,
Patriots.
right. But I'm just saying there is going to be growing pains for Bo Nix. I think in the future he's going to be a really good quarterback, especially if he gets into Sean Payton's system and can really learn along the way. I just don't see it this year at all.
I thought we played the Broncos this year. I would have said it was be the battle of the Pains.
Yeah, really. All right. Speaking of the Raiders, let's go to the Raiders right now. Obviously, there is a lot of question marks with this team. Defensively, they are very good. Offensively, I have no idea what to expect from this team whatsoever. Anthony, you were talking about the defense. You want to
Yeah, I
take this
was
one
going to say, I was talking about it with Miami. Kristen Wilkins is going to be great for this defense. It's really going to open it up for Max Crosby, who hasn't had a lot of help. Now you're going to get a guy to go on the inside. They're going to have to, account for Kristen Wilkins. So now that's going to open up more one-on-one matchups for Max Crosby. I think Malcolm Kuntz, the other pass rusher, has developed as well. So this is a solid defense, and the defense is going to have to do a lot of carrying of the offense. The offense, I know Gardner Minshew's had his moments and has a good touchdown to interception ratio, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to really carry the team and going to be a guy that's going to be, a guy you're going to develop your team around. They're going to eventually need to draft a guy. Aiden O'Connell is not the answer as well. They did lose Josh Jacobs, so they're going to expect a lot out of Zamir White. Devontae Adams is still a great receiver, but, Jacoby Myers has injury problems, so outside of Devontae Adams, did he really have a true established option outside of that? So I don't really like their offense, but I do love their defense. Their defense is going to keep them competitive. Probably, I'm going to say probably a 6-win team, I think.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And actually, Nick, you were talking about national relevance before for teams. Did you see that Max Crosby is actually going to be one of the new co-hosts for the Let's Go podcast, the one that Brady was on?
And Belichick.
Really?
Yeah, so Brady's not going to be on it permanently anymore. This is insane. And Ben, I'm sure you heard this too.
Mhm.
It's Max Crosby, Bill Belichick,
Mhm.
and Jim Gray, and who was the other one? Peter King. All 4 of those are going to be together on a podcast, and it's going to air on Sirius. Also, so maybe they'll get some national relevance.
Apparently, Brady's going to be a guest time to time, so
We'll see. Well, Ben, since you're up here talking, what do you think about the Raiders?
I want to say I love him, but I also don't hate him. And I think it's going to be more because of the coach. I think that really last year, Josh McDaniels was not the guy for the first half. Just a lot of disarray, but Antonio Pierce did really good of buying the guys in. I think that the celebration they had here and there time to time got a little overblown, but they just kind of had that vibe of like, all right, we're just going to go out and compete because they don't have a lot of expectations really with this team, at least to me specifically. I think that they're probably like a 6-7-1 team, kind of like right above there. When I look at the overall division, I'm not going to go through my whole entire list right now, but I think they're better than the Broncos, and I think that they're kind of right below the Chargers. So,
okay, Nick.
Well, I don't think they're a complete dumpster fire like Denver is. They're probably. I could see them being a 500, like maybe an 8 or 9 win, 7 or 8 win team, probably.
Wow,
7 or 8 wins. Well, they have Gardner Minshew now. could be serviceable.
You mean when he's not dancing to Creed music?
Yeah. Well,
I think the defense.
I think that. I don't know. I don't think they're a good team, but I would say they're a little bit below average. Probably third in the whole division.
Okay, I mean,
not as bad as they were last year.
I look at this team and, like Anthony said, defensively they're really good. But what is their options offensively besides was it Devontae Adams? I mean, like what is their options? I mean, and there's rumors that he's going to get traded, so they have nothing.
They're putting a lot of stock into that double tight end set with Brock Bowers and Mayer. So hopefully that could give them a passing attack.
I mean, I know they picked up Mattinson from the Vikings, hoping to fix their running game, but I don't really see much out of this team. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 wins, maybe. That's being nice. Shockingly, or not shockingly, what was the number? The number for the Raiders is 5.5. So do we think they win 6 games?
Yeah. I do.
We'll see. All right, moving on here to the Chiefs. Now, we could spend an hour on the Chiefs alone. Or
we could also spend 5 minutes on
or we could spend 5 minutes. Really. There's not much more really to add. I wouldn't say they improved anything offensively. I would say they've become much better defensively. Obviously, you have the number 1 quarterback in all of football, Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce's back. Everyone thought he was reportedly going to retire. There's not really much more I can add to this. I just think they're the best team in football. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
They're the heavy favorites. They're
not surprise me that they go back to the Super Bowl. Not one bit. I cannot bet against this quarterback. He does essentially most of the workload than not. But when you have the talent like Patrick Mahomes, most of the time you can get away with it. And you saw what they did last year without Tyreek Hill, and they also went into away playoff games in which Patrick Mahomes never did until last year, and he got the job done. He went into Buffalo in January. He went into where's the other place? Drawing a blank. Because there's 2 places. They were the wild card team.
Baltimore.
Thank you. Baltimore. Right. So I think a lot of people are like, well, they're not going to get through at least both of them and get to the Super Bowl and pull it off. And they did. So I just cannot bet against them. I mean, Xavier Worthy now too. That draft pick, I think, is going to do wonders for Mahomes, as well as Hollywood Brown. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm not the biggest Juju grab cards of the past, but I really do think that he can be like a serviceable receiver with Mahomes because, kind of when you have a quarterback and just the way that he played with them. So I wouldn't shock me on that. But, yeah, they're the best team. 11 wins, hammering that for sure. I'm going to go around 13.
Anthony?
Yeah, I absolutely hate this team, but I gotta respect them, right? But yeah, but you can't bet against Pat Mahomes. Now, I do think Josh Allen is right there with Pat Mahomes, and you got to remember, one guy's got Andy Reid, one guy's got Sean McDermott. I think the combination of Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes is nearly unbeatable. We've seen guys like Alex Smith, Andy Reid, making playoff runs with Alex Smith. And get into the second round of the playoffs. So once you got Pat Mahomes, that basically made them unbeatable. And once they got rid of Tyreek Hill, just like we said with Allen with Brady, Mahomes started spreading the ball around, and that made their offense even harder to stop. They got Pacheco, so now you got to account for the running game. Travis Kelce is a little on the older side. When is Travis Kelce going to take a step back and decline? When he does take that step back, that's definitely going to hurt the Kansas City Chiefs. But they did bring in Xavier Worthy to help out the receiving core. I know Marquise Brown is dealing with some injuries, and we don't know what's going to happen with Rasheed Rice. But if all those guys are on the field, that's a much better receiving core than what they had last year and the previous year when they did win the Super Bowl. So I can't pick against Kansas City anymore. So I think they're definitely going to be another 12-win team season again and probably, go to the Super Bowl again.
I'm just going to make this very simple. The Chiefs are going to win 12 to 13 games. The number is 11.5. I think they're going to go over. Not a question. And that's it. I'm just going to be very simple.
Yeah.
I think they repeat again as Super Bowl champions. I think they're going to win 3 in a row.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that first part. That 11.5, yeah, 12 or 13. Definitely take the over.
All right. I think we made it to the end.
All right.
No.
Almost.
Oh, we got to make division predictions. Oh, okay. So we all agree the Chiefs are at the top, right? That's not a question.
You can make an argument right now with the division. Just you put in the whole overall conference. The Chiefs are number one.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, I had the Chargers stinking, so like, I don't know. I guess, and this is going to sound like weird, but I'm going to put the Raiders as number 2, and I'm going to put the Chargers 3, and I'm going to put the Broncos 4. But it's not going to be by much.
All right, so I would say Chiefs 1, Chargers 2, Raiders 3, Broncos 4.
Mine too. Yep.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Chiefs 1, Chargers 2. I'll go Raiders 3. I think it'll be close, and then Broncos 4th.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. We made it to the end finally. Join us tomorrow for our playoff awards, predictions, and hot takes. Nick and Ben, remember this from last year, from cold take to hot take. We have some fun with these. I might have a few Jet hot takes in there. But that will pretty much do it. Make sure you follow us on social media at ETB Network, across the network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you follow the Football Forecast at TFB Forecast ETB. We'll be doing a lot of stuff on there as well. We'll have some picks, obviously, from our show. We'll do some stuff behind the scenes as well. We have a fantasy league that we're going to be drafting within the next couple of days. So you'll get to hear about that as well. We're planning on doing that as a little live draft feed, but we got to work that out with dates. So we'll figure that one out as well. Also, listen to the Football Forecasts wherever you get your podcast, where it'll be released. And finally, Football Forecast and the network presented by Playback. We plan on doing streams and stuff as well for the NFL, college football, and all football coming up this season. Final words from everybody as we get ready for the NFL season to start.
It's the best time of the year. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, best time of the year. Looking forward to it. We've made it through our predictions.
I'm stressed, actually. I'm more stressed. We're Jet fans. We're stressed.
That's a good
Hey,
point.
man, welcome to my world for 20 years. Essentially.
Well, for Ben Kruse, for Nick DiMartino, for Anthony Balester, I'm Nick Morgasen. Have a good football season, and we will see you for the Football Forecast next week.